Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this podcast named Arts and Life with Shuba. You may notice I'm not speaking very confidently because I'm yet to confirm how it is going and is my voice is reaching to you. All right, now I think we are on air. Hello, everyone. Hello, namaste. I welcome you to this podcast, Arts and Life with Shuba. I am Shuba and I welcome all of you on behalf of Online School of Drama. Online School of Drama conducts many programs for children and adults. Yes, programs related to drama education. And this podcast, Arts and Life with Shuba, exploring creativity and human connections is about all arts, and we invite guests from all over India and beyond India who have done a lot of work in arts. And when I say arts, I mean all arts, literary arts, performing arts, and visual arts. So today's guest, before I speak about today's guest, आई वांट टू वेलकम ऑल ऑफ यू इन हिंदी ऑल्सो। आप सबका स्वागत है हमारे इस पॉडकास्ट में जिसका नाम है कला और जीवन शुभा के साथ। हम इस पॉडकास्ट में तरह-तरह के मेहमानों को तरह-तरह के मेहमानों से मतलब है जो तरह-तरह की कलाओं में काम कर रहे हैं, उनका जो लंबा अनुभव है, उनका लाभ लेने के लिए, उनसे कुछ सीखने के लिए हम उन्हें यहाँ पे बुलाते हैं। आज के जो हमारे मेहमान हैं वो बहुत ख़ास हैं। ब्रिटेन के मिस्टर टिम टेलर जी हैं और टिम टेलर जी के बारे में मैं थोड़ा-सा बताना चाहता हूँ कि टिम टेलर किस तरह का काम करते हैं। टिम टेलर एक सीनियर ड्रामा एजुकेटर हैं। सीनियर ड्रामा एजुकेटर, राइटर एंड थिंकर whose work sits firmly within the tradition of educational drama rather than theater as performance. He is part of a generation that sees drama primarily as a way of learning, knowing, and making meaning, not simply as acting or staging plays. इतना तो आपको भी पता ही होगा. So, those around the world who work in drama and education, I think everybody knows who Tim Taylor is. So I need not to speak more on that. I must hurry now to welcome Tim Taylor, right? Hello, Tim Taylor. You are welcome to this podcast and to this episode devoted to. Hello, Tim Taylor.
Hello,
Welcome.
hi, hello, everybody.
How are you?
I'm very good. It's hot here, and we don't have air conditioning in the UK because we don't get hot weather very often. So when it is hot, it is properly hot.
Oh, weather
So
is hot. But
yeah,
if you have been to India in summers, then you will say that is not
I
so
have.
hot in England.
Yes,
You
yes.
have.
It doesn't get as hot as India. It doesn't, but we don't have aircon, so when it gets hot, we can't cool down indoors. It's just hot all the time. But it's not hot like India. No.
Yes, yes, I can understand. So, Tim, my first question will be, what kind of conversation you enjoy most?
Ah, that's a very good question. Okay. Well, I enjoy all kinds of conversations. I think dialogue is the sort of the oil of life, really, the thing that keeps the machinery turning. And I particularly enjoy professional conversations about drama and learning and the world of that we operate in. So I'm looking forward to this conversation very much.
Well, nice. So I'm curious to know, like, when you are with the people who do not come from the world of drama and you have to introduce yourself to them, how do you introduce yourself to them?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. Because the issue with drama is that people have an idea about what drama is. So at the one end, of course, people think about theatre and performance
Yeah.
and actors and people on the stage or on television or in films. So I said, well, no, it's not that kind of drama. It's drama for learning. And then most people have experience of drama at school when they were, a student at school, a child at some point at school. And so they go, oh, yeah, okay. And then they think about what their experience was. So I'd like to tell you briefly about my experience of drama when
Yeah,
I was
sure.
at school. So I went to a very tiny school in the middle of England in a place called Lakesend, and there were 15 children in our school. The whole school had 15 children. And
Okay.
my dad was the teacher. There was only one teacher, and my dad was the
I
teacher.
see.
And this is 1974, and he would take us into the hall. It was a small hall, and we would sit in the hall in our spaces. And then he had a cassette. You remember cassettes that he
Yeah.
would get there was a magazine in the UK called TES, and it's a teaching magazine. And once a month there'd be a tape for drama, and he'd put the tape in the machine and he'd press play, and then this voice would say, "You are on a spaceship." And we'd all sit there like this. And then the voice would say, "You are taking off." And we'd all go, "Pfft." And then
Oh,
we'd play. We'd run around the hall and pretend we were on the moon or something. And it was a great deal of fun. And I can remember my dad sitting there, and he'd be reading the newspaper. He'd have his newspaper open while we were playing and listening to this tape. He'd be reading his newspaper. And then
mhm.
when the tape finished, he'd put his newspaper away and say, right, let's go and do something else. Let's go and do maths or something. And the funny thing is that was my idea of what drama was. I thought drama was messing around, basically, listening to a tape or whatever and playing, pretending.
Yeah.
Um, and it was only once I started teaching. Luckily, I was very lucky in my first year of teaching that I met somebody called Luke Abbott who came to our school, and he worked with my children that I was working in a primary school in a place called Norwich, and he came and he taught my children, and it was the first time when I thought, oh, that's not the drama that I experienced at school. That's the children weren't messing around, and Luke wasn't sitting there reading a newspaper. He was involved with them. He was in
Mm.
role. They were on a mission. They had a job to do. There was a terrible disaster that had happened, and they were the rescue team. And I watched my children, who weren't easy to teach. They were difficult to reach. They were quite disengaged, and they had their own reasons for that. But they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And they were picking up bits of paper and drawing and writing, and I thought, oh, this is for me. I love this. This is amazing. So yeah, so it was a long answer to your question, Shuba, is that when people ask me, I tend to tell stories. I tell stories about my dad. I tell stories about my childhood. I tell stories about my teaching, because that makes more sense to people than trying to explain what it is. Because what it is quite difficult to explain, particularly if people don't know what, or if they have a particular idea about drama. It's quite difficult to explain, but people understand stories.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting, interesting. Um, Before we talk more about drama, education, arts, or AI, uh, just want to know what are you curious about these days? Because I think you are quite a curious guy. So, what are you
Yes.
curious about these days?
Well, I've been very lucky in my teaching, very, very lucky in my career, because, like I say, I met Luke in my very first term as a teacher. So the very first term, a few weeks into my teaching career, I was in my early 30s, and I met Luke. And he introduced me to this idea called Mantle of the Expert, which we'll talk about
Oh,
later. And that became my obsession. And one of the things about Mantle of the Expert is that however much you learn, however much time you spend practicing it, however many classrooms you visit and work with children, there's always more to learn. It's a never-ending journey. And again, we'll talk about her later, but Dorothy Heathcote, who invented Mantle the Expert, I saw her towards the end of her life. By the time I was a teacher, she was already in her 80s. And she would say, I saw her a few times, and every time I saw her, she would always say, I'm learning new things now. I'm still finding out new things. So
yeah,
one of my great fascinations is unpacking that and understanding it and getting better at it. The other fascination I have in terms of my work is the role of AI. Now, AI is still a very new thing. It's still developing, and I think it's still something that people feel very uncertain about. And I
yeah,
understand why. There are lots of dangers and challenges with AI, and are lots of things are going to change, I think, as a result of it. But I find it very a very fascinating thing. Um, when as a young person, I was always very interested in technology, and I'd read lots of science fiction.
mm,
And the idea of artificial intelligence was always something fascinating to me. And I never thought that I'd see it. I never thought that it would happen in my lifetime. And the fact that it has is just constantly remarkable to me. And I spend a lot of time talking to AI and training
mm.
AI and learning from AI in conversation. Um, so yeah, those are the two things at the moment. There are other things in my life as well, Shuba. It's not just teaching.
Yeah, yeah. So your explorations in AI, we will definitely
Yes,
talk about
yes,
it at length.
yeah,
Uh, right now, as you know, this podcast is fundamentally talking about arts and life. So, throughout your experience of these years, um, what do you think? How arts matter to human life?
wow. Okay. That's a nice, easy question. That's your simple question, isn't it? Well, I think to some extent art is human life. There's a fantastic book about culture. Um,
Mm.
and I'll try and remember what it is before I stop talking. And the idea is that culture comes from play. So if you think about a wedding, now obviously a Hindi wedding is very different to a Christian wedding, but
Yeah,
they're both rituals. They're both things that have conventions. People dress up, and there are roles for people, different roles that people play. There's a timetable. There's a list of things that happen. If you think about it, that's theatre. That's that
yeah,
a wedding is theatre, as are many things in life. They're theatrical. Now, a wedding is very structured, but I don't know if you're watching the World Cup at the moment, but that's theatre. There's a game going on, which is grown men are playing a game. They're playing at football, and lots of other people, lots of other adults are playing at being a crowd and doing the things that crowds do. And I think this is really, really built in to what it is to be a human being, this idea of play. And the arts are an extension of play. They are the way that human beings take play, take chaos, if you like, take randomness, pretending, and formalize it and make it into and apply various conventions to it. Um, so I don't think it's not like you can separate what it is to be human and what it is to be the arts and culture, I think they are how we interact with the world. They are the way that we make meaning. It's that significant, I think. It's that built in. Without the arts, there is no culture. There is no human beings are still going, roaming around, hunting and gathering and killing each other, and it that we don't get any further than that without culture and without the arts.
Yeah. When you say arts are an extension of play, that catches my attention more than usual because I have gone through a research paper that was finding uh, common areas in play and arts. Like art is also a play, and you say arts are an extension of play. Can you make it simpler to understand? Why do we say so?
So play is the application of imagination. We are in ourselves and we do things out in the world. And when we do things that are um, imaginative, when we apply our imagination to the way that we interact with the world, um, that is that's play. We are playing with the world, if you like. We're playing with how things are. Now, children from very, very young start playing. That's something that's clearly built in to what it is to be a human being, is to play. And they'll do imaginary play, imaginative play. They'll do kinds of play that are routine play. They'll do things
Mhm.
over and over again. I can remember my son lying down in the conservatory and lining up all his dinosaurs. He'd spend hours and hours lining up his dinosaurs, and then he'd put them
Mhm.
in different orders and groups and all sorts of things like that. What's driving him to do that? I sit and watch him and think, what is that about? What is making him that determined to organize the world into, into this in this way? And that's clearly something about what it is to be a human being. And what happens is that through play, through our interaction with play, through the application of our imagination, we start making culture. We start formalizing things. We apply things. We say, well, these things seem to resonate. They seem to have meaning and purpose, and they seem to communicate with other people. If I do this, people may say, then that seems to have a reaction with other people. So my inner life, the life that I have that's peculiar to me and is only inside my head, is now connecting with other people. And that connection is where we get society from. That's where we get culture and civilization and community. Um, so I think play and play being, so what is play, I suppose? What's the difference between, how am I defining play? I think play is that space that doesn't have a penalty. So by that I mean when Finn is lining up all his dinosaurs, at the end of the day, he has to pack them up and put them in the box. That
Yeah.
doesn't actually change anything in the real world. It only changes something in his psychological world, in the world that he's operating in, terms of his imagination. It doesn't come at a cost. And so at an extension, sport is like that. Sport doesn't change the world. It doesn't, people don't go to war. They don't kill each other. They don't, nothing changes in terms of the real world from people kicking a football around or playing cricket. It's just a game. It's play. And I think that's really important. As human beings, we need to have those spaces. I suppose they might be called a sandbox in computer technology terms, a place where you can try things out and play with things. Now, of course, the implications for that in the classroom are really profound, because if you think about a classroom as a laboratory for play, for trying out ideas, for being, trying out things, trying out interactions with people, dealing with tensions and difficulties, it doesn't actually, there's no penalty there. Nothing actually is affected in the real world. It's just in terms of us practicing or playing at things.
Yeah, I'm understanding it. Bringing imagination into action. Um, we can call it, I mean, play and play. When we say play, it does not necessarily mean, um, it does not necessarily include role play. It
No, no.
can be any game, right? They're involved in it. And imagination has a great role to play, in fact. So, what do you think imagination uh, can imagination make us more responsible human beings?
Well, I don't think I don't think responsibility comes without imagination. I don't think I think part of do you know, the better angels of our, or the better angels of our souls, or the better angels of ourselves, or something like that. There's a book, Steven Pinker, and he talks about how culture has developed over time. If you look over a long period of time, people have become more civilized. And he says one
Mhm.
of the great things that civilized people was the novel. So when people started writing novels, people read these novels and got the inner thoughts of other people. So if
Yeah.
you think about when you're reading a novel, that's written by another mind, and you can read that. Now, we take a lot of these things for granted because we have TV and film and theatre and all those other things. But before that, the only way that you really found out what other people were thinking was through conversation, I suppose. But you could sit with a novel and start reading about other people's thoughts and ideas. And I think that's where empathy, that's where Steven Pinker, that's not my idea. That's Steven Pinker's idea. Steven Pinker's idea is that empathy comes from the Enlightenment, from the idea that people started to read and share inner thoughts, and responsibility to other people. I think a lot, to a large part, comes through empathy. Now, for family and close friends and community, we as human beings have evolved to have that kind of responsibility to those people, um, through the advantages that it gave our ancestors to have that empathy, to have that responsibility towards those people. Have I explained that right? So if you think about small communities of when people, people tens of thousands of years ago, they had responsibility to their community. But if you want to build bigger societies, if you want to build countries, and you want people to feel responsibility to people that they don't know, then you have to share some idea of empathy. You have to have some idea about what it is to be a human being, and that other human beings are in some way similar to you. And I think the arts and culture are the way that that operates.
How has arts entered your life? I mean, when did you realize it? You have a particular inclination toward arts. You were telling me the incidents that was it drama first, or were it other arts uh, you were part of, and then gradually you realize that drama is something which is close to me for practice. Uh, do you remember that how you chose to work in drama actually?
Yeah, pretty clearly. I didn't have any interest in drama before I
Oh,
started teaching. Before I started
oh.
teaching, I had no interest in drama.
So what were you
Um,
teaching?
what was I teaching? primary school.
Yeah.
I worked in a primary school, but I remember
Okay.
I
All right.
started using drama almost straight away. But before I started teaching, I didn't have any interest in drama. I wasn't on the stage. I've never done any acting. I'm not an artist. I don't paint. Um, as a child, I didn't write. I'm not a writer, or I wasn't. I write now, but I didn't as a
Mhm.
child. Um, but I did enjoy games and role play games in particular. I used to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and I used to read lots of, I say, science fiction and fantasy books. So I had a kind of rich personal imagination, a world in my head that was very rich. But I didn't have any inclination to communicate that as a growing up,
Mm.
and until I was in my 30s. I didn't I wouldn't have thought that was the way I was going. I didn't think that was the way I was going in my life.
Mm. Oh. In your journey of practicing drama or drama in education, do you remember any beautiful mistakes you are thankful to?
Yes. So I don't think there is a way of doing what I do, which is drama in the classroom, without
Mhm.
making countless mistakes. You make mistakes all the time. So
Yeah.
one of the ways that somebody told me about mistakes is to think about it as a mistake. So when you make a film, they have lots of takes, don't they? In a film, you say
Yeah.
take one, take two, take three. Now
Yes.
the one that they use, that's just one take. All the others are mistakes.
Oh,
They're not used. So that's how I think about mistakes. I think that, and that's again, that's one of the great things about drama is that the space that you're operating in terms of drama, you can stop it any time you like, and you can rerun it. So many, many, many times I've been in situations where I've done something, started something, working with children. And of course, children, especially young children, you work with kindergarten, they can do lots of very random things and come up with ideas that you never predict. So you have to be adaptive. You have to be prepared to say, oh, well, let's hang on a minute. What did you just say? Well, let's start again. That last one, that was a mistake. Let's start again. Let's try this way. And so I don't really. I think there would be so many, Shuba, so many times that things have gone wrong for me. Um, but I think the big thing was that it never stopped me. It never put me off. And once I was clear in my head that these were just mistakes, once I got that in my head, then I never worried about it again. I never, I just thought, well, that's how it works. It's just it's evolving, it's unfolding, it's happening. You can't it won't happen without mistakes. It won't.
beautiful way of looking at the word mistake. Nice. Lovely. And we have generally been expecting teachers to make mistakes normal in the teaching learning environment, but we have been thinking more about children. Let them do mistakes. We talk less about the teacher or the facilitator. Yes, they can also make mistakes, and it's okay. It's
Mm,
okay. And they can restart. They can accept, yes, I have made a mistake, and let's do this way. That's lovely thing. I mean,
mm,
uh, to be yourself as a teacher, to be vulnerable or to be accepting the idea of making mistakes itself opens the space for learners or others, co-learners, students, to take mistakes as normal.
Yeah.
Uh, Lovely. So, in your long journey of drama, if I ask you, can you tell me one thing or a few things you are thankful to drama now?
Gosh, yeah. I think I genuinely think this, and I've spoken to other people who I've worked with who've had a similar journey, if you like, that I genuinely think that this changed my life. I think if I hadn't met Luke in 1995, if I hadn't come across this idea, this approach, if I hadn't had the opportunity that people like my head teacher, Sue Eagle, gave me at the time to experiment with it and learn it, even though I
Mm.
was for a long time
Yeah.
not very good at it. I wasn't very good. It took me a long time to get close to being good. So I was very, very lucky, Shuba, very lucky in that regard. And I think it made me think about life very differently. It changed my life. I mean, just to give you just a kind of a simple example, really. One of the things about drama is that it's asking you to explore things from different points of view. So drama for education, you're constantly asking questions. It's about inquiry, and you're in situations. Now, drama involves tension. If it didn't have tension, then it would be boring, and that wouldn't children wouldn't be interested in it, and it wouldn't work. So tension's really important, and working out how to resolve conflict, working out how to resolve difficulties or problems, um, means taking on other points of view. It means exploring things through the point of view of other people. And it's taught me really much more than I ever had before I started using drama, about the importance of that, about the importance of thinking, well, what's it like to be for a simple point of view, what's it like to be a 7-year-old in a classroom? What what is what is that experience like? And the work, the Mantle, the expert work requires you to put yourself into their shoes and see the world from their point of view, and what's what's their agency, what's their opportunity to make a difference, what's urgent and important to them, and what drives them. And so I think it's um, it's quite difficult to put it all into words, but it really did change my view on how the world operated, and gave me a different way of looking at the world and interacting with it. You've got your mic turned off. There's a mistake. Your mic's turned off, Shuba. Your mic. You've got to turn your mic on.
Yeah,
There you
mistake. Yeah, sorry.
go.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's all right. No worries.
Um, for someone who is quite new to drama in education, how do you explain, or how do you uh, say what is drama in education?
So if you're a teacher, you're talking about a teacher specifically, or somebody who,
Yeah.
what is it? Are you talking about somebody who's interested in education and teaching and learning rather than,
Let's assume teachers who have no
yeah,
idea of drama and
yeah,
education.
yeah,
They know drama as stage
right.
performance only.
Okay. So, I mean, that is a big part of my work, and has been for 20 years or more, is trying to make this work accessible, trying to explain to people how it works. And what I've learned more than anything well, it just through trial and error, lots and lots of mistakes, is that the best way to explain this is to do it and then to unpack it afterwards. So I always, when if I'm working with a group, I was working with a group of students, trainee teachers in Portugal a few weeks ago, and we're all in this drama studio, and you just start. So I said, when I sit on this chair, I've got a chair, I pull a chair up. I say, when I'm going to sit on this chair, I'm going to be somebody in a story. Is that all right? And they go, yeah, all right. And then I sit on the chair and then I go, oh, oh, oh. And then I stand up and I say, did you see that? And they go, yeah, he's hurt his back. I go, yeah, yeah. I wonder what he's done. And they go, well, perhaps he's lifted something heavy or perhaps he's done something. I said, well, let's find out. So have a listen and see if you can pick anything else up. And I'll sit back on the chair. And then this time I'll use another convention. I'll say, oh, oh, I'm not getting any younger. Oh, look at this park. It's getting a real mess. Oh. Then I stand up and I'll say, did you hear that? And they go, yeah, he's not getting any younger. So that must mean he's old, right? And did you hear the thing about the park? They say, yeah, what's that about? And I say, well, this person is a park keeper. And they work in a park and they've been looking after the park for most of their adult life, but they're getting old. Their knees have started hurting, their back's hurting, and they need some help. Could you come into the story and help him out? And they go, yeah, all right. So I stand up and I say, well, everybody stand up for a minute. Oh, thank goodness you've arrived. I've got all these leaves to sweep up, and they're all over the park. You can see, look, there's all over there under the trees. They're just terrible, and my back's hurting. I wonder if here's a broom. Can you help me sweep them up? And of course they do. They go, yeah, all right, like that, and they take the broom, and then they're all sweeping up. You see, like this, and I say, sweep them over there and put them in a pile, and then we'll decide what we're going to do about that when you're done. And then they all gather around and I say, oh, thank you. That's really helped me out. So what should we do with these leaves? You see, and then one of them might say, well, we could burn them. And then somebody else will say, no, you don't want to burn them. And I'll go, well, why not? Why don't you want to burn? And then you go, stop, just everybody stop for a minute, like that. And they all stop. And you go, that's drama. What we just did there, that's drama. And that will work with children who are 5 years old. I promise you. That works with children who are just starting school. And I know because I've done it dozens and dozens of times. Now, what's going on? What's going on is really hard to explain because there are so many things happening. How did you know that I was somebody in a story? Well, you told us. I know, but I'm a person. So I didn't change. I just sat down and groaned a bit. How did you know? And they were like, oh yeah, I don't really know. I said, that is your imagination. And we just take it for granted. We all take it for granted all the time. We never ask ourselves how strange it is or how wonderful it is. We just do it because we are human. And you can do it really from about 4 or 5 years old. Children can do it. And that's what's so brilliant about it, Shuba, is that you don't have to teach anybody really about it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to. I mean, academics do. Of course they do. That's their job, is to unpack things. I'm meeting my friend Brian Edmonston next week, and he's a professor at Ohio State University. And he spent his whole career trying to explain it. That's a job for an academic. I'm not an academic. My job is to show people how easy it is and then teach them the tricks, if you like, the techniques, the conventions that I'm using and I've learned how to use in order to do it. Now, for teachers, that's enough. They don't need, I mean, if they're interested, of course, they can read all about it and go and read Brian's books and other people, and they can do that. But you don't need to really understand it in order to be able to do it because we're human. We know how to play. We know how to use our imagination. And that, to answer your question in a long way, is what I do. That's how I explain it, is by doing it rather than sitting there and talking about it or showing a whole load of slides.
Oh, yeah, but that is quite interesting for me. I mean, you keep on explaining and explaining, and then they will ask questions, and you say, no, no, this does not, no, no, we do not do acting. No, no, but you have to be an actor for that. You may, no. But this question is still remains when you create this situation, and then teachers will say, oh, then you need to be actor. I cannot do this because you are a good actor. So what is your response? Because drama in education, people say we are not acting. You have
No,
to adopt that attitude. And sometimes it's confusing for a beginner, like, no, you
yeah.
were acting, what else it is. So but I'm not good at acting, I cannot do this.
Well, acting is a difficult is a loaded word, I think. I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
those words that puts people off. It's I'm not an actor. An actor for me is somebody who has a certain set of skills that they have, you know, developed through practice and hard work and application and all the rest of it. Um, I but I clearly am acting. When I sit there and go, oh, my back hurts. My back doesn't really hurt. Of course it doesn't. I'm acting.
Yeah.
Of course I am. But I'm not an actor. I'm representing somebody with a bad back. I don't need to put on a voice. I don't need to do any performance. I mean, that is a performance, but it's only a performance that anybody can do. Anybody can sit there and go, oh, my back hurts or my legs ache, or thank you very much for helping me. I mean, for me, I just say it's teacher in role. That's what it is. You're bringing in somebody else into the space. Now, this is, and I say to young teachers especially, but all teachers when I work with them, I say this is a superpower. If you have this superpower and you can give it to yourself whenever you want, suddenly you can go anywhere, be anyone at any time, doing anything, and the walls of the classroom disappear because you could that suddenly we weren't in the classroom anymore. In our imagination, we were in we were in the park, and they were sweeping up. And then they started getting what they were saying, well, maybe there's a hedgehog. Hedgehogs like going in the leaves. And that's when I stop and I say, you see what's happened? You'll suddenly become responsible. You suddenly become invested. You're suddenly worrying about hedgehogs. There's no leaves. There's no hedgehog. We haven't got brooms. We're not in a park. That's all in our imagination. But that's not a trivial thing. That's not a slight or a thing that doesn't matter. It's an enormously significant thing because as human beings, constantly through the arts and other media, suspending our disbelief, if you like. I mean, I'm entirely sure whether I like that expression, but it's that we're becoming vested, I think it's better. We're invested in stories. And that's what happened. That's when I've done this before, when I've done it with children, when I've done it with adults, they're suddenly invested in something after about 5 minutes. How does that happen? I don't, I can't explain it. I just know that as human beings, stories are almost irresistible to us. If you present them
Yeah.
in the right way, and you say you bring in somebody, this is the teacher in role, you bring in somebody into the space. There's something special about that, Shuba. There's something extraordinary. And being able to do it in the classroom with children and then to contextualize their learning so that when they're learning in that story, in that context. That's transformative. I've seen it time and time again, hundreds, thousands of times.
So that makes me feel lighter when you say, yes, we are acting, but this is not an acting that you have to be an actor first to do. This can be done by anyone. And when we say acting, you said it seems a loaded word. I like that, and I also like that because some people who are working in drama education, they just do not want to use this word acting. But you say, yeah,
Mm.
this is acting, but this is kind of representation. Anybody can do this. And when you were doing this, and when you were asking them, you created a situation, they became part of that, and they even do not know they started acting also.
Exactly.
They start,
Exactly.
and they, yeah, and they were saying we don't know acting, and they were doing it. So this is that easy, and this is how it is done within the drama situation. So
Yeah, so
uh,
it's the thing that's key is that can you help me?
yeah,
It's such a hard offer to turn down. You know, could you stand up from it? Can you help me out? I've got all these leaves and they're really cool. Could you just grab one of these brooms? Now,
yeah,
it's such a hard thing to turn down because it's such a reasonable offer, isn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you? It's such an easy thing to go around sweeping up leaves, and everybody knows what it's like. And of course, as you
mm,
say, they're acting. As soon as they start doing it, they're acting. Now, acting
yeah,
feels like a really difficult thing to do, but it's
yeah.
not. It's just using your imagination, but an inactive way. Inactive. You've come across that expression. That I like inactive more than acting because inactive is a kind of more accessible word, I think, in some ways for people. So you're just enacting. You're just pushing a broom around as if it were real. Of course, that is acting, but there's no need to use the word because if it puts people off.
Yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. So that happens in the beginning. I mean, the teachers who are the beginners, they start from this question. No, 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 I do not know acting. How can I do? Then this is the best way of introducing drama in education to make them part of some session, and then they know uh,
Yeah. I
what
would
kind of.
say, I would say from experience, if you're working with a new group, do some teacher enroll within, I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Do a hello, welcome to see, hello, nice to see you. My name's Tim. Today we're going to be learning about. Anyway, I'm going to start a story, and it starts with this chair. You just do that within a few minutes, just a few minutes, and then people are kind of going, "Oh, okay, all right." This drama thing, this acting thing, you've already done it. You've done it so quickly and easily that it just from then on, it seems to put people mind at rest. They don't seem to worry so much after that because they've already done it. If they say, "Oh, I can't act," you go, "Well, you have. You did it when you were pushing the broom around. Wasn't acting." They go, "No, that wasn't acting." "Oh, you mean performance?" "No, no, no. Performance has got nothing to do with this. That's a completely different thing." But moving a broom around and going, "Oh, my back hurts." That's teacher and role. You can learn that, and once you learn it, you've got a superpower.
So that takes us to the understanding that through drama, something more than something happens which is not possible in ordinary teaching.
No.
Um, and so drama in education is all about trying to understand that something, the play of imagination. Can we say so?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's even a small difference. It's not like you suddenly got like a 5% or 10%. No, no, no. You got like 1,000%
Yeah.
difference because you could do anything. Like if you stick to orthodox teaching, and I tried orthodox teaching, I did it. I was a
Mhm.
classroom teacher for 20 years. So I did a
Okay.
lot of orthodox teaching as well as doing drama. I didn't spend all my time doing drama. Um, but so I know what that's like. Well, that's a that's a actually turns out to be a very narrow skill set. There's not a huge variety in what you can do there. But as soon as you layer on imagination and story and drama, then it's opens up things in a, as I say, in a thousand percent, because you can go anywhere, as I said before, do anything, anywhere, at any time. So if you're teaching kids about, I don't know, history, let's say the ancient Egyptians, and you've got a series of slides, and you're saying, oh, this was, and you just say, well, here was Howard Carter, and he opened up a tomb, and it was called by Tutankhamun, and kids are sitting there going right like that, watching it. Well, that's a very narrow teaching strategy. You might show a video, you might show some photographs, they might read, um, but that's kind of it. Oh, you're going to speak. All right, they'll make some notes. They won't stand up or do anything. Well, okay, so that for me, that's a narrow band. That's a didactic band, and you can do it well, and you can use some great resources. However, if you say, imagine what it must have been like to be part of Howard Carter's team. Everybody stand up, just gather around the front here. Imagine standing in front of the doorway for the first time. I'll show you a photograph. This is what it looked like. And what would be going through your head? Would you cut that rope to get inside? Now, immediately you've expanded the classroom through their
Yeah.
imagination. Now they're standing in the shoes of those people. Now they're imagining. Now, if you go further, if you say, did you notice when you were coming in, did you notice the paintings on the wall, the paintings of Egypt, those people? I wonder what it was like to be living in ancient Egypt. What about if you were one of these paintings, what kind of painting would you like to be? Would you like to be an ordinary person doing an ordinary job, cutting wheat and fishing or looking after a baby or cooking bread? Or would you want to be somebody important, somebody of power and authority who had people serving them? Or would you like to be a god? Perhaps you could be one of the gods. Let's have a look at the painting. Everybody spread out. Let's have a look and see what this painting looks like. And then the kids are suddenly working out what they're going to be in the painting. And some of them are ordinary people who are sort of serving or doing kind of jobs. Others are people of power and authority sitting on thrones. And some of them are gods standing there. And you go, oh, okay, let's have a look at this. Ah, I see. So what does this tell us about the person who's buried in there? Because these paintings, they're not there by accident. If these paintings are on the wall, what do they tell us? Just see the difference. The difference is night and day, isn't it? It's like it's not a little difference. This is massive. And of course, the children, because they're now embodied, they're now enacting, they're now imagining themselves through different points of view, exploring history from the inside, not looking at pictures and film and learning about things about people that, were alive thousands of years ago. They're actually inside it. Then their relationship with it is completely different. And I can say this to you with enormous confidence because this has been my career. I've spent 30 years doing this, and I know this works, and this is the difference. And you talk to children about their relationship with it, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They talk about it and say, "Oh, it's brilliant. We love it. It's so much fun." So, so I don't. So my point is that it's not a little difference. It's a massive difference. It changes
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. So still, what are those misunderstandings about drama that frustrate you the most?
Um, Nothing. I don't. I mean, it depends whose misunderstanding it is. If it's the people I'm working with, if it's the teachers I'm working with, then nothing about their misunderstandings ever frustrate me because they are, they're trying to understand something that's, takes time to understand. Are you talking about people outside of education or people who don't understand why drama works in
Yeah,
education?
yeah, the people who are in education, but they have certain notions about
Oh,
drama and
okay.
education.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it used to frustrate me a lot more than it does now. I think I've overcome that frustration. I think for a long time I was, why can't people see this? Why can't they? For me, it seems so obvious. It's like, oh, okay, why
Yeah,
wouldn't you do this? I think now, through to I've talked to a lot of people through social media. I spent a lot of time. I don't spend so much time on social media now, but I used to spend a lot of time. And I would talk to a lot of people working in education, particularly in secondary education, which I don't tend to work in very much. And I think their feeling about it is that that it's not efficient. So if your focus as a teacher is on getting children through exams, so they're going to be doing, so they're studying this subject, and at the end of it, they're going to do an exam. That's a that's a quite a specific set of aims there, and it's much more to do with children's memory. I think it's much more to do with teaching them a set of things that they can then do in the exam, and then they'll pass the exam, and then their job done. That's really their job. I don't think primary education is the same as that. I think primary education is more about expanding children's experiences and teaching a set of skills, particularly mathematical and writing and reading skills, and amongst a bunch of other things. But they don't have a particular outcome. They're not like you have to pass an exam at the end of it.
yeah.
They're more kind of developing a set of skills and knowledge that will then be used and applied later in their lives. So the frustration used to be for me is what they don't seem to understand the difference. But now I just think, well, they're seeing it through their eyes. That's their experience of education, and doing things in a didactic way makes much more sense to them.
Now, as you have been training many teachers, I would say internationally in many countries, do you feel that there are particular areas or aspects that most of the new practitioners do not understand well enough, aspects of drama?
Um, I don't know. I think I think it's something that develops over time. So it develops
Mhm.
through practice.
Yeah,
So you can read a lot, um, but if you don't get in a classroom and work in a classroom with children, then then your practice won't develop. It's because
yeah,
you need to have those experiences. Um, but once you do start practicing, the thing that will really accelerate your development is reading, is doing the reading as well, and and training, and because you're constantly kind of moving. If you don't do any reading and you don't do any training, then there's only so far practice will take you, because you're not really introducing new ideas and new things that will take you further. So I think I think what the okay, I think two things really. One is that some people, some teachers immediately, like I did, love this approach. And they go,
Mm.
"Oh, I love this. I'm gonna do whatever I can to get good at this."
Yeah.
And then they go in the classroom, and you know that's it's usually very hard for them because it doesn't work straight away, and then they have to work at it. But they're determined, and then they work on it. Okay. Um, for those teachers, there's a number of those, but there's a lot less who then do the reading as well. And I think it's because teaching is hard. It's very time consuming, and finding the time to also do the reading is very, very difficult because it's just having the time to do it. Because if you have any time, it's probably been taken up with marking and planning and doing all the other things that take up your
Yeah.
time. And if you have any free time, then you should spend it with your family and your friends, and you should have a work-life balance. So finding time to study as well is difficult. Now, some do because they have a motivation to do that. Now, when we get on to, and this has always been a problem in the development of this work, is get overcoming that hurdle of, as well as the practice, is the support and the reading and the training and stuff. And that's always been a problem, and always been a kind of a hurdle and things that's made it difficult for it to develop beyond a few very keen enthusiasts. However, and we'll get to talking about this later, AI is transforming that. AI is making that much, much more straightforward, because the big issue, and again, I'll talk about it more when we talk about AI, has always been planning. If you need to plan in order to be able to um, get better at this, because you need to plan and think about what you're going to say in the classroom and then what's going to happen next and all the rest of it. You have to do that, because it's not improvised. You can't go in a classroom. Well, once you get really, really good, you can improvise, but for a long, long, long time, you have to plan
Yeah.
and you have to think it through in advance. And that's just takes up a lot of time. It's just very difficult. Plus, it's really hard. It's a difficult, if you don't know enough, then actually planning something that works and is effective is difficult. And that's held people back for the longest time. But as I say, we'll talk about it when we talk about AI. But AI, I think, is is helping that. That will open those doors.
That gives a good background to our conversation about your work in AI supported um, development. But I would still hold that conversation for some time,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask here that when we work with children, many people say that while working with children, you also learn a lot from children.
Yeah.
Have children ever taught you something which a book never could?
Yes. All the time, all the time. But there's
All the
one
time.
story. I'll tell you one particular thing that happened to me, as
Sure.
a story. So I'm in a classroom in a place called Basildon, which, if people know, Basildon is a place in Essex by the sea. And there's a group of children in there, about 6 years old, something like that. And
Okay.
I'm talking to them about a painting. We're looking at this
Mhm.
painting, and it's just we're working our way into it. They're going to be a team of people who rescue people, a lifeboat team, a team that rescue people. This painting is a famous painting of a young girl and her father in the Victorian times, and they're rowing out to rescue people on a rock, on a sorry, on a sinking ship. And so they're
Mhm.
rowing that. So that's the painting. And I'm sitting there with these children, And I'm asking about what they can see in the painting. Very straightforward. It's just a way in. And this lad puts his hand up and he says, I can see someone in the water. They're waving. And I said, oh, okay. I'm looking at the picture and I'm like, where's that? And he goes, there. And he points off the side of the painting. He just points at the wall. And I looked at him and I went, you can see somebody with their arm in the air in the water there. And he went, yeah, yeah, they're just there like that. And I was like, oh my. I just thought to myself, you're so far ahead of me. He's 7 years old and already he's learned, or maybe he doesn't understand the convention. I don't know. I don't know, Shu. I just don't know that there's a frame. I can only see the painting in the frame.
Yeah.
He's not looking, he doesn't care about the frame. For him, the
Yeah.
painting is everything. The painting is just the
Mm.
bit that is shown on the screen. So I did know enough. I said, well, we're going to need to rescue them. And then everybody was up and throwing ropes to them, and the boy was representing the person in the water, and he was sort of, and it stayed with me. I mean, it's 20 years ago, this, at least 20 years ago. But it was one of the most significant things because up until that point, I'd been quite instrumental in what I was doing. I'd plan things and then I'd do them and I'd work on them but they were instrumental, they were systematic, they were mechanical. I wasn't really in that world when I was talking about it. When I was talking about the painting, and then I'd say to the children, well, let's be the lifeboat people. And then they'd be lifeboat people. They'd all be playing, they'd do it, but I'd sort of stand outside it. I'd be in role or something, but I wasn't really in that world. I didn't think about it. I was still a teacher who was playing or acting at being somebody in the story. What I did after that was I always thought to myself, I've got to be in that. I've got to be in that world. I've got to go all in, be somebody who's in the world. So when I look around, I can see the rocks over there. I can turn around and see the lighthouse. I can feel the sea under the ship moving, under the boat moving up and down. I have to take myself there in terms of my imagination, just like he did, because that's what's required. That's the art of it, really, rather than the mechanical stuff. It's the artistic stuff. Um, so yeah, I think I mean, like, loads of things I've learned from kids, but that's the one I think about the most significant thing.
Yeah. That is a super example of how children think. And I'm, by the way, reminded of Sir Kane Robinson, his TED talk when he uh, many times used to tell a story or an incident when a few children, 6 year or 8 year old children, were given to draw something, whatever they like, and that little girl was drawing something, and the teacher asked, "What are you drawing?" And she said, "God." And then the teacher says, "But how does God look like?" And she said, "You will know in a minute." I mean, that kind of you reminded me of that incident. I mean,
Yeah,
they can think where you are not
yeah,
thinking. You out of that frame, out of that box.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So they stun us sometimes by their sharp imagination. Um, but still, do you think that uh, children are losing some kind of imagination in today's world?
yeah,
Because when they are used to the screen, the child of 90s or 80s, 1980s, and the child of today, uh, is today child losing some kind of imagination? What is your experience?
I don't think it's necessarily a modern thing. I remember reading, I'm pretty sure it was Plato. I'm pretty sure. Um, and it was something that Kieran Egan, I don't know if you know Kieran Egan, but he's dead now,
No.
sadly. But he wrote some fantastic books. One book called Teaching Us Storytelling, and I'm sure he said that Plato was said that writing, the invention of writing, and people learning how to read and write took away something from people. It gives them something, but it also takes something away. And
Hmm.
I think I
Yeah,
think I think what the situation is that it's as children go through school, they become schooled. We teach them ways of behaving and ways of seeing the world and ways of reacting and interacting and what's good and what's right and what's wrong and all those other things. And and of course that's all great. Education's a great thing. I'm not arguing against it, but it also takes away something as well. And I'm not inside that boy's head. I've got no idea how he did that, none at all. But I suspect it was because he didn't know about frames. He didn't know that the picture was a frame. It's something
yeah,
that I don't remember learning that, but I did at some point in my and there's all kinds of other things that I've learned about conventions, about the way that the world works and how art works and all the rest of it. And and I think all those things to some extent are things that limit us. And I think one of the things that we do in school is that as children are going through school, they become more and more desk bound. And by what I mean by that is they spend more and more of their time sitting behind a desk. So when they come into school in kindergarten in early years, they spend a lot of time playing. They go outside and they experiment and they play in the sand and they play role play games and they do all kinds of other things. And they're up on their feet a great deal. And they're interacting through in the world inactively through physical and imaginative play is a huge part of their way that they make meaning with the world. But as they go through school, they're taught how to pick up a pencil and hold it. They're taught how to draw and how to write. And then gradually, as they go, you can just visit any primary school and you'll see it happening. As they go through school, they become more and more sedate. They spend more and more of their time sat behind a desk, more and more time with a pencil in their hand, and less time up on their feet doing inactive stuff, what we'd call drama. So if you go into a year 6 classroom when children are 10 or 11 years old, which I do a lot, and it's the first time they've worked with me, I have to be very cautious. I have to go very carefully and safely. And they need to feel safe. If I'm
hmm,
working with a group of reception children, little ones, I can say, look, just grab your binoculars and look for those dinosaurs. Where are those dinosaurs? Let's all be dinosaurs. And of course, they'll all be playing with you because they're not, then that's their way of being in the world. But if you try and do that with 10 and 11-year-olds, they'll go, no, I'm not doing that. That's going to make me feel silly. So, and it's the same with adults. So what's happened to them? Well, what's happened to them is school. School's happened to them. Another good example of this is drawing. If you go and sit with children in a classroom of 6-year-olds, they'll draw. If you say to them, "Let's draw the dinosaur island. Let's draw the dinosaurs," they'll all go off and they'll draw dinosaurs. They won't worry whether they look like dinosaurs or not.
yeah,
They don't care whether they look like dinosaurs. That's not important to them. They're not
yeah,
trying to draw things like they really are. They're drawing what's in
Yeah.
their imagination. And if you go over and ask them, they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's a T-Rex." And I'll say, "Oh," you go, "Oh, has he eaten something?" And they go, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
And they say, "Where's the blood?" And they'll grab a pencil and they'll draw the blood, right? Because they haven't been taught that that isn't drawing. They just think that's drawing. Now, you go into a year six classroom, and I had this experience only 2 weeks ago, and you ask them to draw. The ones who like drawing, the ones who are good at drawing, will happily
Yeah.
draw. The others will go like that, and a lot of them will go, "No, I'm not drawing. I'm not doing it."
Yeah.
So what's happened to them? What's happened to them is school. Is that they've learned that they're not good at drawing, so it's easier not to do it. It's better, it's safer not to do it. I'm not going to draw because I'm terrible at it. Now, going back to your question, you were asking about imagination and whether children's imagination is. I think we've got to be very, very careful, because if we school imagination out of people, they think they're not imaginative. I get this all the time. Teachers say, "Oh, I'm not imaginative." And you go, okay. Maybe you're out of practice. That's that
Hmm.
that's just something that you haven't practiced for a while. You've got to practice that, because and so much of our lives, if you like, is that's all done for us. We play video games, we watch films, we read books, we, you know, look at things that are around us, works of art and things. And that, so um how much incentive is there to be creative? Where are the opportunities to be creative? How, is it safe to be creative? And I think that is a problem.
Um, so when you work with children or young people, what are you hopeful about?
Hmm. Do you mean in a general sense, or how do you mean hopeful about them, you mean?
I mean, s- like you were saying that you get something, you lose something, something like this, you were saying. But so in that sense, in today's child, there must be something about them that gives us hope and that makes us feel good about them. Then they can contribute something for the betterment of the society.
If given opportunity, if you're given opportunity, there's a fantastic, um, I don't know what you'd call it, a meme or a heuristic, um, that's created from American, indigenous people, and it's like imagine a circle like that, and then a cross like that in the middle,
Okay.
and it's divided up into four quadrants, and it's called, oh, I'm trying to remember what it's called now. It's called the circle of belonging or something like that. And
Okay.
one of these quadrants, it's about it was designed to help young men who felt, um, disaffected and disconnected, like they didn't have a place in the community. And I mean, it comes from an ancient idea, I think. But one of the thing that really resonated with me was that if you want to give people the opportunity to belong, they need an opportunity to be generous. Now, it's quite a strange idea. So how can you be generous? Well, generosity is something that you give in order to help other people. And by doing that, that helps you to feel like you belong, that you're part of a community. Now, in school, what opportunities are there for children to be generous? What opportunities are there for them to contribute and to make a difference and to give something to the community? So if you think about that boy, the one who's pointing at the painting or the edge of the painting, that I what I could have done is I could have said, no, there's what you're pointing at the wall. Why are you point? No, I'm talking about the painting. Tell me what you can see in the painting. And he'd have
Yeah.
learned a lesson. He would have learned a lesson at that point. He'd have gone, oh, paintings are only those things that are inside that frame. And that would probably
Mm,
be the last time he'd ever think about that because I'd have taught him something. Now I told him how to look at the world. But I didn't do that because I'd
yeah.
taught myself not to do that. So I gave him the opportunity to be generous, the opportunity to take us off in a different direction. He became the center of our inquiry. He suddenly was at the center of it. And that's a huge thing that we can do as teachers. Now, my hope all the time, well, no, my belief, it's better than a hope. My belief is that children hope for a better future, that they want the opportunity for a better future. They hope to do well in their lives and to be successful and happy. That's their hope. But they need opportunity to do that. And as a society, do we offer young people opportunities to be generous, to make a contribution, to be, you know, at the center of what we're doing? We tend to marginalize young people. We don't tend to say, we don't tend to value what they have to offer. Within their own communities, of course, they do. Within they have their own subcultures, their own, areas of inquiry. Um, but I'm talking about society as a whole. How often do we put young people at the center and give them the opportunity to be generous? I don't think we do very often. So, yeah, I worry about that.
Very thoughtful, very thoughtful. How often do we give that opportunity? Um, in Indian context, or say more or less, that happens in many countries that arts are at the frills of curriculum, and some subjects are always important, not more important, important, and art is not important. So if the time comes that arts disappear from the education, what might happen?
Well, I mean that arts have become more and more marginalized. Um,
Yeah.
that sounds like that's happening in India. It's certainly happening in England. Um, I think, I mean, the reasons for it are economic. So the idea is in government that countries that are economically successful train students to go into engineering and science and into those fields, um, which I is a crazy. I don't understand why governments do that because if you look at arts, arts are one of the most successful industries in the world. I mean, just look at the arts in India. Look at your thriving cinema and art scene and drama. And so I don't know why politicians are so obsessed with this idea, but that for the longest time that's been the issue, and arts have been marginalized. Um, Maybe it will change. Maybe. I don't know. I wish I had a more hopeful answer to that.
Mhm. Let me change the topic. Ken, I want to ask you about the term, the phrase dramatic inquiry, which you use a lot uh, in your work, actually. how it is different from inquiry based education, or how it is special, or say what do we mean by dramatic inquiry? What happens in dramatic inquiry that does not happen in an ordinary classroom?
Yeah. So obviously they're overlapping. It's a Venn, isn't it? So if you take inquiry without the dramatic element component, inquiry is about investigations, about asking questions and then
Yeah.
investigating potential answers to that. And in the classroom, you'll get project-based learning where you'll get questions where the children are inquiring or investigating into a particular area of study. Um, what dramatic inquiry does is that it comes back to what I was saying to you before about the narrow or the expanded world. As soon as you add dramatic to the inquiry, then it doesn't have to be inquiry that is only is limited by what's happening in the classroom. It can be anything. So let's talk about a team of explorers landing on an island. In Mantle the Expert or drama, the children could be the explorers jumping out of an aeroplane and parachuting down onto the island and investigating the island. So there's a whole all kinds of inquiry questions are going to start opening up that wouldn't necessarily be the kinds of inquiry questions that you would ask in a classroom. So what lives on the island? How can we find the signs of what lives on there? What kind of weather do they have here? What's the geography like on this island? What's in that cave? Now, those are all inquiry questions, but you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't ask those questions if you didn't have the imaginary world that you were exploring, the dramatic world, if you like. And then you layer on that all the drama inquiry questions that come from the interaction with people. The kinds of questions that ask, well, what makes somebody do that? So maybe you find somebody on the island who set traps around the island to capture the animals that live on the island and then take them off and put them in a zoo. So your question might be, well, why would somebody do that? What's their motivation? What would we say to them if we met them? Could we change their mind? You see how it's just question after question after question that's demanded by the context, by the imaginary or dramatic setting that is much more expansive, in my view, to straightforward inquiry questions. Does that explain that? Or do you have something else in mind?
Yeah, so what I understand, what I gather from you is, um, you put them in imagination, you put them into dramatic action, and then the inquiry becomes lively. That is what I understand from you. It's not you sitting here and I'm directly asking you, do you know this? Do you know that? And in imagination, they are part of that scenario, and they explore things through inquiry.
Yeah. So there's lots of inquiry all the time. So going back
Yeah,
to that story that I told you about my dad and in that tiny school,
yeah, yeah,
that wasn't about inquiry. There was no inquiry there. That
yeah,
was about that
yeah,
was about that was about experience. That was about
yeah,
exploring your body and your emotions and pretending and that there wasn't an inquiry question there. Nobody said, why are we on this planet? What are we doing here? What's over the horizon? How are we going to map it? Nobody did that because that wasn't the medium. That wasn't, it was to do with expression and body. Dramatic inquiry, there's always questions all the time. Every step of the way, there's a question. And that's the difference between dramatic inquiry and the kind of drama that I was doing as a child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Inquiry after inquiry. Whatever little reading I have done about you or your work, I often see that you use these terms often, like purposeful learning, ethical learning, meaningful learning. Um, I want to understand in simple
Yeah.
words, and I'm confused between like purposeful learning and meaningful learning. Are these different? And what do you mean by when you say ethical learning? This comes again and again in
Okay.
your writing.
Okay.
So, first, let us understand this through you, and then if I have to ask you which concerns you most, I would like to know that also.
Okay. Well, go back to the questions that I asked about that space thing that I doing with my with my dad's hall. So the three questions that I asked was, what's over the horizon? We're going to need a map. That's purpose. So
Yeah.
if we're why nobody ever asked, why are we on this planet? Why are we dressed up? Why have we flown all the way up there? Nobody asked that. But that would be the question, wouldn't it? We're explorers. So what do explorers do? Well, they look over the horizon. They go and find out what's over there. And of course they make maps. And then they who are these for? Who sent us here? Well, it would have been the people back on Earth, NASA or something. So we need to report back to them. So what kind of things should we tell them about what's here? What have we discovered? We should write that down and send them a message. So that's purpose. There's always a purpose to what things that we're doing. We're not just doing things. When I was stomping around pretending to be on this planet, there was no purpose to that. I was just stomping around. I was having a good time playing at being on big steps or whatever. But there was no purpose to me being on that planet. So in dramatic inquiry, Mantle the expert, there's always a purpose. There's always a reason, and that gives purpose to the work. Now, if you think about meaning, well, for a child at school, what meaning is there to most of what they do? They're sitting there holding a pencil and moving it across the page and making letters, and a lot of the time, there's no meaning to that. There's no bigger, the idea for them is, well, one day this will be useful. One day writing, this thing that we do, writing, that will be useful. Maybe, like I did as a child, maybe they enjoy writing stories. Maybe they do. So there's some meaning there for me as writing a story. And then the teacher will take it away and mark it and give it back to you and, whatever. But that's not really what writing is. That's not what not drawing and maps are. In the real world, they're about communicating. They're either about writing things for yourself so that you remember them and they organize your ideas, or they're for other people. So why are we making these maps? Why are we sending these notes back to NASA? Well, because they're not here. We are. We're on this planet. They're not here. So we need to send them back ideas about, an idea of what it is that we found here. That's communication. So the idea about making marks and drawing and writing and talking is about communicating things to other people. That's the meaning in it. That's why people do it. There wouldn't be much point otherwise. And the ethical dimensions, of course, is that well, what right have we to be here? What about if there are things living on this planet already? How should we interact with them? We've landed on this planet. What about if we discover life on this planet? What should we do about that? What gives us the right as human beings to go and land on other planets and inhabit them and claim them for our own? And of course, you're getting into colonialism. You're getting into the whole like bigger ideas about, the way that human beings all the way through history have gone around claiming things, land, if you like, with but there's always an ethical dimension to that. There's always something that needs to be asked about that. Um, but if you never ask it, and of course nobody ever asked me that back, when I was in my dad's school, I never think about it. I'm just playing. Well, that's dangerous in my view. That's dangerous for children to go through school and not consider the ethics of what they do. Now, Mantle the expert, which I know we're going to talk about in a little while, is all about responsibility. It's all about our
Yeah.
responsibility. So if we're a team of people who are flying to a planet and it turns out that it's not dead, it's not a rock, there's things living there, what's our responsibility to that? Where are the ethics in that? And it's a way for me exploring those things through an imaginary context, even if that imaginary context is crazy and unlikely, doesn't matter. The questions are still important. The ethics of it are still important. And exploring those things are things that children will take with them into their adult lives. They'll remember that. They'll think to themselves, well, I need to question these things. I need to ask questions about the world. And when they, read newspapers or watch TV or see news or constantly be in dialogue with those things, um, because they've learned that at school. They've learned the ethics of things at school. Not an assembly, not somebody standing up there and telling them right and wrong, but actually exploring what it's like to be people who are doing things and have responsibility to others. That's proper learning, in my view. That's meaningful, purposeful learning.
At this point, I would like to say hello to all our listeners or viewers. And technically, I'm unable to see them. I had this screen here, which right now is not showing me who all are there. I have asked my colleague to help me with this. But I'm sure a few of you are here. Thank you very much for being here. And I am trying to see if you have any comments or any questions for Tim. You can directly ask here because we are live here and your questions are welcome. So, Tim, now I move to the most exciting part, one of the most exciting parts, I should say, and that is your current work, that is teaching as a story making. That is very exciting to see, and I'm thankful to you to make me part of that beta launch kind of. And I
Mm.
have seen that, and many, and it is this AI tool is so helpful as you were explaining that it is saving so much time. It is giving also giving you ideas, but mainly working on your ideas. And there are so many tools. I think some tools are still in progress. They are not
Mm.
working. They have not started working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But as you suggested, I asked it to respond in Hindi language, and it was quite good. I was not expecting that good Hindi.
Uh-huh.
So I must say, I must congratulate you that I think it is happening in other languages also. But Hindi, generally, we have been seeing very bad translations, but it is working very well. And I'm very
Mm.
hopeful that it will. I mean, there are very small, mm, I won't say mistakes, that those can be little glitches, but it was wonderful to see the very good Hindi responses from that tool. So
Right.
that is what I had to tell you. And the tools are simply wonderful. giving outlines, giving those scenarios, and building the context and all that. So, because you have named it teaching as story making, and so first of all, for many of us who are not aware of it, so please tell us what is this teaching as story making? This is so exciting, but I want you to tell others also about this.
Okay. So I think there's a couple of dimensions to it. One is that, as I said to you before, I came across Mantle of the Expert in the mid 90s, and Luke Abbott was my teacher, and he learned from Dorothy Heathcote. The issue around Mantle of the Expert, which has always been um, a challenge, is the name of it really, and what it means. So Mantle of the Expert doesn't really communicate very much until you know what it means. So once you know what it means,
Yeah,
you kind of go, oh, that's a
yeah,
really clever name. But it doesn't tell you anything until you know what it means. So
yeah.
so that is an issue with it. The other thing is that it because it comes from the drama, I mean, Dorothy Heathcote was a drama, that was her medium. It goes back to some of the things that we were talking about before in terms of how do you make that accessible to people who don't have a drama background, who are people who maybe might be put off by words like acting and drama and those things. Um, so so I've been thinking for a very long time, many years now, about how to frame it maybe in a different way. And the way I've come across, or I've decided on now, is to talk about it as story, really. And that what you're doing is that you're creating stories or making stories, and that's the context for the learning. Now, in the story, the children are always adults. They're always people with expertise and responsibility. So if you know what Mantle of the Expert is, it so you know when you do you play video games? Do you ever play video games?
I have seen my kids and I've tried to play with
Okay,
some video
all right,
games. Yes, I have
okay,
played a few, very,
right,
very few.
okay. So video games are made up of various kinds of architecture. So one of the architectures, one of the programs that are running across lots of video games are the things that drive the graphics, the things that make people move and the scenery and all those things. Okay. So that's operating at that level, but it can be used for lots of different games. Now, for me, the Mantle of the Expert is like the operating system. That's that system that's operating underneath that you can build things on top of. But you don't, to play the game, you don't need to know anything about that. That's not important to you as a game player. You don't have to learn that. You just play the game. So I built something that uses Mantle of the Expert in that way, that it's there, and if you know it's there, if you're somebody who's knows about Mantle of the Expert, you'll go, that's Mantle of the Expert, that's Mantle of the Expert. Oh, I know, I recognize that. Well, that's not a surprise because it's built there, it's built into the operating system.
Tim, sorry to interrupt you. Do you think we should first try, I mean, for those who really do not know what is mental of the expert, should you
Yeah,
first tell
yeah,
what is mental of the expert? Like, because many people who know a little about drama in education, many of them, I can say most of them, have no idea what is mental of the expert. I can tell this about at least India, Indian subcontinent.
right,
So, would you,
okay,
before talking about
right,
teaching as a story making, if you want to tell us what
yeah,
is mental, because you are mentioning it again, and why not tell us
yeah,
what
yeah,
mental of the expert is, please?
okay, yes. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to show you rather than tell you. So I'm going to
All
show you
right.
a series of images and slides, and hopefully
Good, good. That will be
that will
wonderful.
help.
That
So
will be
I'll just
wonderful.
yeah, I'll just share my screen. So can you see that? Okay,
Yes.
you can. Okay. So here's a classroom using Mantle the Expert, and you'll see the teacher sitting over to the side. She's wearing a red jumper, and you'll see the students, and they're all focused on something in the middle of the classroom. And you'll see that they're all busy making
Yeah.
notes and drawing and doing other things. Now, um, what's going on there is that in the middle of the room is a nest. And if you look very closely, you can see there's something shiny in the middle of the nest,
Yeah.
and that's an egg. That's
Oh.
it's a dragon's egg,
Ah.
and the children are not children in the story. They're a team of dragon experts. And the
Hmm.
teacher is in role, and she's somebody who lives in the village, and she's contacted the dragon experts because she's found this in her garden. She's woken up in the morning, she's gone down and opened the back door to let her dogs out, and there's this nest in her back garden with an egg in it. And the dragon experts have turned up, and they're now making notes and observations about the nest. That's Mantle the Expert. Now, what's going on there is that the children are in a fiction, they're in a story, but
Hmm.
they are a team of experts, and experts have responsibility. And that's what the mantle means. Mantle means responsibility.
Yeah.
They have responsibility because they're experts. So the kinds of conversations that are going on with the children are to do with careful observation, making sure that they get everything drawn and written down. And they're talking about whether they should touch it or not, or whether to leave it, because there's a dragon. We don't know where the dragon is, but the mother of this egg is somewhere else, and it could come back
Yeah.
at any minute.
Hmm.
So their responsibility is to keep everybody safe and to, you know, deal with the egg in a responsible way. So element number one is a team of experts. So story, team of experts. Second element is a client. That is somebody that they're answerable to. Now, there's somebody else who's not in this picture, who's working in a university, and that's their client. And the person at the university is they're sort of the person who runs the team. So they need to write back to this professor, he's called Professor. They write back to him and they tell him about what they found. And they write reports and they say, we found an egg, it was green, it was a shiny egg, it was in the back garden of a house. This is a drawing of what it looked like. So there's a team and then there's a client. And the third thing is that there's a job or a commission. That is something that the team have been asked to do. And this commission is to find out why these dragons have turned up in this village, where they're from, why they're there. That's inquiry. And the teacher, Nicole, she will structure um, significant parts of the day, significant parts of their learning through that story. Not all of it. There'll be other lessons that she'll teach in different ways, but as much of the curriculum as she can will be to do with the fulfillment of the commission. Have you got any questions before I go on to show you some more pictures?
Yes, maybe. Mm, when we were talking about acting in drama and education, and the teacher says, "Oh, I don't know acting. How will I do it?" In the similar lines, I'm thinking of a question from a teacher's side. I don't know anything about dragons. How can I become a dragon expert? So, I mean, what is the preparation? How will they get into that responsibility of being dragon expert?
The children or the adult
Yeah,
or the teacher? The
yeah,
children.
the
The
children.
children. Yeah, well, of course, they don't know anything about dragons. Well, that's not quite true. They know a bit. They do know a bit.
Yeah,
Most people know
yeah.
something about dragons, and certainly children know something about dragons. So if you said to children, what do you know about dragons? Before we go into our story, what do you know about dragons, or what have you heard about dragons?
Yeah, yeah.
So one of them might say they breathe fire. Well, some of them do. Yeah, some of them do.
Mm,
But they breathe other kinds of things as well. Sometimes they breathe ice. Sometimes
mhm.
they've just got long claws. Anyway, well, if we're going to be looking for dragons, we're going to need something to protect ourselves with. What kind of equipment should we take with us?
Mm,
Now, they'll so you're starting from what they know, and then you develop it. Now, once you get to a certain point, you can stop the story. You're stopping the story all the time. It's stop and start all the time. You stop the
yeah,
story and you say, well, look, before we go much further, we really should spend a bit of time learning about dragons. So I've got these books here, and there's some
okay.
slides and pictures and things. So we've got our journals. So just have a look through and write down anything you think we need to know about dragons. And then you
Mm,
start building up a knowledge base. And very
yeah,
quickly, very, very quickly, because children, once they're interested in something, they learn fast. Very quickly, they'll
yeah,
learn all about dragons, and they'll know loads about dragons, um, because you've opened the door, and their learning is now purposeful. There's a purpose to their learning. We're going to find out all about dragons because we're going to be dealing with dragons, and dragons could be dangerous. So we better find out everything we can about dragons. Now, the teacher, you're absolutely right. The teacher's Nicole is going to have to learn about dragons. She's going to have to do some research. She's going to need to, get on AI or go on the internet and, you know, build herself up a little bit of a knowledge base. But
yes,
that's the same with every subject we teach. As a
yeah,
teacher, you've got to learn your subject. How else are you going to
yeah,
teach if you haven't learned it? Now, Nicole
yes,
chose dragons, but it might be ancient Egypt, or it might be, I don't know, islands or weather or whatever it is. Yeah, you're right. The teacher's got to learn the subject, otherwise, how are they going to teach it?
yeah,
But
yeah,
luckily, now there's lots of ways of getting that information quickly, and AI is
yes,
fantastic. If you just write, give me a 500 word briefing on dragons, then boom, that's done. Whereas when I first started teaching, I'd have to go down to the library and get books out and sit there, and
yeah,
you don't have to
yeah,
do that anymore. So it's quick and easy now. Okay, shall we
yeah,
carry on?
yeah,
So, so there are five elements to story. That is, there's characters, location, events, time, and tension. So, in as I said to you before, Mantle the Expert is about creating stories. So here's a story. There's a team of people who are dragon experts, and there's a woman who's come down in the morning and found an egg in her garden. Location, her back garden. Events,
mm,
she's discovered this nest in her garden. Time,
yeah,
it's happening now. This is happening. It's not happening
no,
in the past, or it's happening now. It's happening right now. The tension, of course, is what is this egg? Why has a dragon laid an egg? And where is the dragon? When will it come back? All
yeah,
kinds of tensions. Now,
yeah,
without drama, without story, there's no tension in the curriculum. If you do dragons as a topic, it'd probably be interesting to children. They'll probably enjoy learning, but there's no tension there. There's no time when they're actually in the same world as dragons. Well, of course, drama allows you to do that because they're in that world, not as children. That would be too dangerous. Children wouldn't be any good dealing with dragons. No, they're not children. They're experts. They're dragon experts because it's Mantle of the Expert. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's Dorothy Heathcote. I thought I'd show you a picture
Ah,
of her.
beautiful.
This is a lovely picture of her working with some children,
Yeah.
1970s by the looks of things, maybe 80s.
Mm.
Um, anyway, look her up on the internet. She's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so just to reinforce that, what I was saying, there's a real world, and inside there's the story world. But you're not in the story world all the time. You're moving in and out of the story world, stopping and starting the story, answering their questions, going back in, setting demands, setting tasks. Uh,
Yeah.
inside the fiction creates a context for the student to study anything that's required by the context. Outside the fiction, though, you can stop the story and then you can teach what they need to learn. So, for example, say they're going to write a report to the professor and tell him about the dragon's eggs. Children don't know how to write a report, so you can say to them, "Well, let's just stop the story for a minute. I'll share this with you. This is something that will help you write reports. Reports are written in this way." So you can do some quite direct teaching, but it's not something irrelevant to them. You're not I mean, why should children write reports? There's no reason why they should, not in the classroom. But in the story, there's every reason to do it. So there's an urgency to it. Uh, um,
Yeah.
and there's a lovely picture of
Mm.
looks like a lion
Lovely.
or something. Uh,
Yes.
children operate within the fiction as a team of experts with power and responsibility. So here they are mapping the sea floor. There's a wreck of the Titanic. They're a team of marine archaeologists. The team
Mm.
work for a client who sets standards and requires information. So here's a member of a team talking to the client, giving us
Mm.
bad news by the looks of things. She's not happy. Uh, and the client commissions the team to perform specific tasks and activities. And these create opportunities for curriculum study across the curriculum. So this is a field hospital, and that's Florence Nightingale. And she's been shown around the hospital where things are, well, they're a bit chaotic, and the children
Mm.
are representing the soldiers and the doctors and nurses and showing around. Um, so if people are interested, um, this is where you can get more information. I've written a book about Mantle the Expert, and I've also written another book called Try This, which is a series of activities, what we call keys, which are things that they're lesson plans that you can use for drama for learning. You can find out more on the Mantle of the Expert website. And if you want to contact me, that's my email address. I
Yeah. Thank
think
you. Thank
that's
you
all of the
for
slides. Let me just,
sharing that in
yeah.
such a brief time, giving some idea of mental health the
Yeah, I
expert.
hope
And
that, yeah, yeah, I hope that makes sense. That's what it is really. Yeah.
uh, yeah, sorry, did you ask me something?
No, I was just saying yeah. I hope that
Yeah.
made sense. I hope that was
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty brief kind of overview, really.
And especially telling the five elements of the story and getting inside the story, out and in. And so now we get back to teaching edge story making
Yes, right,
and understand how it is helping and what is in your
right.
mind. What is this tool there for?
Yeah. So on the website, so right. So one thing to bear in mind, and thank you for being one of the testers and for giving that feedback because that's really useful to me, is that at the moment it's a beta. So we're still building it and it's still in development, but we're hoping that it will be available uh, towards the end of August. And once it is, I'll share the information with you. And if you'd be kind enough to share it with your community, that would be
Yeah.
amazing. But it's basically it's two sides to it. One is there's an AI planning tool, which is the one that you experimented with,
Yeah.
um, and that will do any language, as far as I know. I don't know if there's some languages that it won't do, but I don't know what they are. But all the major ones anyway, or all the
Yeah.
significant, all the ones that I think I don't know. There may be some on there it doesn't do. I don't know, but anyway, it does
Yeah.
most languages. And it'll do any curriculum that is on the internet. So if you you can put in there whatever curriculum it is that you're working from, and as long as that's published on the internet, then it should be able to plan for your curriculum. Um, and then the age of the children, and then can I show it to you? Can I show it? Would that'd be easier to
Yeah,
show it
sure,
to you
sure,
rather than
sure.
explain it to you?
Yeah, if you
I'll
have
just
that.
I'll share my screen again. Go back to here. Um, yeah, that's what it looks like. Can you see that? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So you see at the moment it's in Hindi because I was just before we
Haha.
met, I was just seeing whether I could um get it working in Hindi, and it I think it's asking a series of questions which I can't read. Um, so I'm gonna put it in English so that I can.
Yeah.
uh, start again. And I won't translate like that. I have to start a new plan. Okay, not to worry. I'll just do a test actually. No. Okay. I'll show you one of the ones that I was working on today. So this is I'm working on a plan on Florence Nightingale. So you can create a context, and this is what the context plan looks like. And you can be in conversation with it. So you can ask it to write a plan, and then you can talk to it and ask it questions, and you can refine it. And then once the plan is finished, and you can see how this is the final kind of context plan. So this is to do with Florence Nightingale. You then click this thing here, plan episode,
Yeah.
and then it will um, switch over to the episode planner, and then you can create episodes. So I've done 8 for this so far. This is the one I'm working on at the moment. Actually, I was working on it this afternoon. So you can see it's got a full lesson plan here. It's got the curriculum connections, uh, the oracy framework, which is part of the English curriculum or will be soon, the narrative function, and then the keys. So remember that book I showed you, the Try This book? I've taught the AI to use those keys. So when it plans using the keys, and then it will give you resources. I'll give you ideas about resources, which you can ask it to give you an image prompt, and then you could use another AI to create images. We're hoping to have that functionality inside this platform, but it's not quite there yet. And then you what is called the encounter. So this is when the lesson starts, and then it'll take you through the whole sequence, giving you the language and the steps. So you can see here, this is one about creating portraits. So it's using key 14. So this is where they get up on their feet and do drama. And you can see the whole plan is there. And then it'll give you some teacher notes. And these teacher notes are really useful because it's giving you guidance on how to teach the lessons. So it will so let's have a look at the one. Yeah, it will sort of tell you about how you might structure the lesson and what you might say during the lesson and how you might support the children. So if you are somebody who isn't terribly familiar with drama, it's incredibly helpful. It's really, really helpful and supports people in how to do that. And again, you can just tweak it. So you can say to it, so see, look, you can see I've given it another thing that I want to do, and then it does the plans again with the tweaks that I've made. Um, and you could just be in dialogue with it until it's given you what you want. So you can see I've asked it to create another image prompt. And then it asks some questions. So it's an amazing thing, Shu, because it's like an assistant. It's like a really patient, competent assistant that does all the hard work, all the difficult stuff of writing things out and copying things down, and it just takes your ideas. So you can just do the ideas and it will do all the work for you.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
you must be. Sorry,
so
please
no,
continue.
ask away. Yeah, go ahead. Go on, what were you going to say?
No, I mean, as usual, people say that what the teacher is going to do, if AI is going to do everything, you are making them lazy. They will lose their creative potential and all that. So you must have got answers for that. And also, one more thing, two questions together. One
Yes,
is
yes, please. Yeah,
what the general notion is excess use of AI, then what are you doing? And I know you have an answer to that. And this second thing is, what does this tool do which ordinary available AI tool do not do? And so
yeah,
what does TSM? What is particular about TSM? So two questions
yeah.
together.
Thank you. Yeah,
Eh,
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the answer to the first question is um, that hasn't been my experience at all. So I've been working with it now for um, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And I'll show you in a minute some of the things that I've created using the tool. And it doesn't make me less creative. It certainly doesn't make it doesn't, it certainly doesn't take away anything from me in terms of my imaginative world. Um, in fact, it liberates me because I can come up with ideas, and then I will ask the AI, and the AI will give me feedback on my ideas. So I'll say, oh, well, I've got this idea. What do you think? And it will give me feedback on the idea. And then I'll develop it with the AI through conversation. And then I'll say, okay, write me a plan that uses that idea. It then it then spends like 2 minutes creating a plan that would take me the rest of the afternoon. I can then read through the plan and tweak it in the way that I want, and therefore I've now done an afternoon's work in a fraction of the time. So
Yeah.
it's not taking away anything from me in terms of my creativity or my imagination. It just means that I've now got like a really competent, brilliant assistant who I can just
Yeah.
keep giving all the difficult stuff that I don't want to do to. So I go, you do this. Right, right. I'll go, oh, I'm not sure how to express that, or check my spelling, or it just does all the stuff that I don't want to do. It does
Yeah.
brilliantly, so that I can now just spend time on inventing things and being imaginative. Um, so that's your answer to the first question. It's an assistant.
Yeah. And I
It's
fully
not a
understand
replacement.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't replace you at all, because um, it will create plans, but you still need to interact with them. You still need to read them and tweak them and make them fit what you want. It doesn't know what you don't know. What you it doesn't know what you know. It doesn't know your class. It doesn't know what you've got in your head. You're in conversation with it. And one of the
Yeah.
things that it doesn't know is it doesn't know what it's like being in your classroom. It has no experience of that. So you have to think, you read it, and then you have to think to yourself, well, what's that going to be like in my classroom? And then you'll adapt it and you'll go back to it and say, okay, what about if I did this? So it's definitely, in my view, I don't think AI will ever replace teachers in what, because I think being a human being in a classroom working with other human beings is always going to be really valuable, because you can learn loads of stuff through being on a computer. You can, and you could sit children in front of computers all day, but that there are, however good the programs are, however interactive and however engaging they are, absorbing, um, they're only learning a fraction of what's important about being a human being and being in a community, sharing ideas. Like that photograph of those children sat around that nest. You
Yeah.
you can look at that. You can look at that photograph and you can see how absorbed they are. They're a
Hmm.
community. They're a team. You know, you don't get that through an AI, and you never will, in my opinion. So I think stuff that a lot of the stuff that happens in school will be supported by AI, and AI will do a lot of the legwork, but the actual interaction with children in community, I'm not talking about, going back to what I said to you before about teachers who are working a didactic way where they just show slides
Yeah.
and talk to the slides. That job could go. That could go, because you don't need a teacher at the front being the intermediary. An AI could do that. But if you want something more from a classroom, if you want community, if you want, children working together and interacting with each other and operating as a community, then you need an adult, you need a teacher in the room. So that is that the answer to your first question, or is that answer to both the questions? I can't remember what the second one was.
Yeah. First question. I mean, I got both the answers, and I agree with them. First answer is very clear. And second, I mean, if you do not have second, there is only one doubt that when you are using it blindly and not using your ideas, then it can become like you are just doing it for the sake of doing, getting an activity randomly, and then doing it without putting your heart and brain into it, then that can be altogether a different thing. But yes, if you really want to do, then a lot of time taking work and hard work and those little things, writing it, is correcting the spellings and all, that saves a lot of time. I agree with that. And it is on you how you are going to make it use. As you said, it has not taken anything away from me, rather, it has liberated me. So that is how it depends on you how you are going to use it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. And so we talk
Can I
about,
just before we move on, can I just show
yeah,
you
yeah.
some of the things that I've made? Because they're going to be part
Oh, okay,
of
okay.
the website
Sure.
once
Yes,
once the website is up and running. So I'll
sure.
just share
Sure,
those with
sure.
you. Uh, yeah, so I'll show them. Uh, so um, yeah, I'll just show you. There's a slide that so each of these, and there's more. These are just six that I've done, but each of these are a context with, and I'll show you what the planning looks like. But each of these is a context, so the teacher can take these and teach them in the classroom. So this is just the front covers. So I'll show
Okay,
you what one of them looks like. So we'll go to the dinosaur island. So this is the dinosaur island one, and these are the plans. So you can see I'm taking the plans that the AI has created and then mapping out a whole series of episodes. So this is weeks of work here. So
So
I won't
this
show you the whole
picture is
thing.
also this picture is also created by TSM.
Yeah, so this is all stuff that's created using the
Oh,
TSM
hmm.
AI. So basically what I've done is taken the output from the AI and then created these lesson plans. Rather than just one lesson plan, though, this is a whole scheme of work, and you can see there's pages and pages
Yeah.
of it. So you've got weeks
Hmm.
and weeks of work. Now, it's this took me a while, but um, what I'm hoping to do on the website is just people can just access these things for themselves. So you can use the AI planner to plan your own, or you can use if you fancy using them. And along with these guides, I've got also created these slideshows, and do you remember I said about using the image prompts? So the AI creates an image prompt, and then you use a separate AI currently, and it will create these images, and they're amazing. So what the teacher will, as they're going through, they'll be using the guide and using the slides um, as a way of structuring the lessons. But they're not just looking at slides, Shuba. They're not just sitting there looking at slides. They're getting up and doing things as well. So the slides are there to support them and to take them into the imaginary world. But they're not just sitting there looking at slides. They're up on their feet, and there's all kinds of activities going on, and there's reading, and there's map making, and there's science, and all kinds of things. And then in the end, they so they have to get all their equipment together. And then in the night, they're woken up by strange noises. Then they write about what they heard in the night. And then they head off and they
Hmm.
find out about some of the creatures that live in the on the island. And then they locate an injured triceratops and they help the triceratops to recover. Anyway,
Oh,
that's where it can go. It's not just an AI chatbot. It can also create these incredible resources. So yeah,
incredible. And this is
yeah.
mind blowing. I mean, you are revolutionizing teaching in a way, I must say. And kudos to you and your team and your
Thanks.
explorations. And now AI in education kind of thing is there in the making, almost ready. So good. Thank you very much for showing this
Thank
to
you.
us and showing the possibility with what is story teaching as a story making. So when we say teaching as a story making, then it is for sure that we know the power of a story in drama, in education, in mental of the expert, and here you have titled is it just uh, teaching as story making. So, would you like to explain the power of story making? Power of story, in fact, why do we use? Why do this story attract human beings? How human beings feel connected to stories? I mean, there is a lot about it, but in nutshell, what would you like to say about this? Because story seems to be at the core of it.
Okay. So you're slightly pushing me out of my comfort zone now, because I'm not. It's kind of
Oh,
there are people with who work in universities who work on this stuff. I I I I know it works and I know how to
all
do it.
right.
That's my that's my how it works. I mean, yeah. I mean, you and I could have a conversation about it. Um, I I know it's to do with the way that human minds have evolved. I know it's to do with how stories and narratives have become part of the way that our brains have networked. And I know that it's to when if you want to remember things, remembering something that's connected through a narrative,
Yeah.
and that has an emotional dimension. So something that affects you emotionally, something that makes you excited, something that resonates with you, something that's demanding, is much more memorable than a list of things that have no um, emotional connection with you. Nothing, just a list of facts or numbers or dates. So it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to remember things. Just if you remember, trying to remember lists and things, there's been loads of research, hasn't there, on how many things people can remember off a list. But if you ask, I mean, I'll walk into a classroom of children. I'm in a school next week in Halifax, who I've worked in for years now, and I can walk into a classroom there and talk to the children in the class about what we did a year ago, and they'll tell me what we did. They'll remember it. We'll say, "Oh, do you remember when we did this? And then that happened, and then that happened." How is that possible? Well, it's possible because we're natural story makers. Human beings make stories all the time. We make meaning using stories. Um, so this isn't going against the way that human beings learn. It's it's in the grain. It's the way that we learn, and so it makes both make sense, but it also makes learning much more memorable and meaningful. There's my best go, Shuba. That's my best go at that. On as I say, on that's kind of outside my realm of expertise.
Thank you for uh, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and sharing these important thoughts, actually. And I just want to add, if you allow, I think the power of shared story takes us to another plane. I mean, when you work as a community in in uh, in the same story, it brings you together. I mean, it creates some different kind of connection amongst us, and you do it so wonderfully in Mental of the Expert, especially. You work as a team. You are part of the same story. You have a mission. You have a project. So, in our society, also, like, stories connect us, and when we are working in the same story with the same um, task or project, that connects us in a different way. I mean, in education, when teacher is uh, giving lecture, and we feel like scattered, we are not connected, the learners. But through such things, we feel we are connected, we are learning together. So I feel that sense. That is what I felt like adding to it. That seems a wonderful thing.
Great,
Oh,
thank you.
interesting. So I hope you can give a little more time to this conversation. I move
Mhm.
forward with my next question that is related to. So there are many teachers who look for tools or techniques or exercises more than anything else. They want to learn activities or strategies. But I think something else, or I think teachers' beliefs or assumptions are more important than only techniques. What would you what would you like to say about it?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you try it another way?
Uh, I mean, many teachers, uh, and let us say, like in drama and education, they learn some activities, they learn some strategies, and they just think that they know what to do. But uh, they carry some other assumptions which do not match and which do not align with what they are doing. They are just doing the activities and strategies, but at the core of their heart, their beliefs are different.
mm,
So
mm.
then how can they work? And I think it is happening, and I don't know how to work on that. But when we focus more on activities, like I have to do the warm up first and then do this game then, and they work like this. They like in another words, I can say like they focus on what to do. They do not focus on what to see.
Mm, mm.
Um, that So, what do you think how important it is to work on your own beliefs when you are working with children? That is what I wanted to ask you. What are
Yeah,
your own beliefs?
yeah. I think in terms of strategies, um, I mean, I think strategies um, can be very, very helpful when you're learning the first steps.
Yeah,
They're a little bit for me. They're a little bit like if you're learning a sport, like if you're learning cricket. There's some things that you can learn in cricket that will make you play the game better. Standing in the right way, or holding the bat in the correct way, or bowling in the right. So you want to learn those things in order to play the game. Um, to start to be able to play the game really. Um, but once you start learning those things, once you get past that point, um, you need to be integrating those things into the telling of the story. So they're not strategies then. They're not things that you're doing mechanically. They're things that are happening because they are part of the story making, the storytelling. They're unfolding, as it were, rather than a list of strategies. Um, so so for that reason, I don't play games, and I don't do warm-ups. So if I'm working with teachers, I don't use games and warm-ups. Not because I'm averse to them, but because they're not really in the same paradigm or the same space as story making. So if you're if, a warm up and a game are kind of technical things, um, whereas story making is using conventions, drama techniques at the service of telling a story. So, for example, when I told you about the old, the man with the bad back,
yeah,
that I often start that way, as I told you, within a few minutes. Now I'm using a convention there. I mean, there's teacher and role, and then they're up and they're doing. I mean, I don't even know the names of most of these things, honestly. Um, they're just in the story. I mean, is it a technique? I don't know if it is a technique. It's just what's required at that point. So, and here's another example. Say I say to them, just walk around the park and find out what there is in the park. And what we'll do is we'll make a map. So I'll lay down a big piece of paper. You have a walk around the park, and when you find something that's interesting, come back and draw it on the map. Now, I don't know what technique that is. I've got no idea what technique. I don't even think that's got a name, but it's inside the story. Now, I could do it as, right, we're going to make a map together. So I want everybody to grab a pencil and start drawing a map. But that's not the same thing. That's a classroom activity. But going off and wandering around the park in their imagination and then drawing what they find is a drama thing. Is this making sense? So I think it's all to do with positioning and framing as story making rather than as drama strategies. It's you think to yourself, well, what? So here's another example. Say one of them finds there's a statue in the middle of the park, right? So they draw a statue, and you say to them, "Okay, so let's have a look at this statue. What do you imagine the statue looks like?" And then they go off and they work in groups, and then they create a statue. Now that technique is would be on a drama list, wouldn't it? It'd be, I don't know, make a statue or something, or I don't know what it'd be called, but they're making a statue. That would be a technique. But I'm not using it as a technique. I'm using it because we're having a look at the statues as part of the story. So
Yeah.
let's have a look at the statues. Let's go down to the pond and have a look what's down the pond. That's oh look, people have been leaving rubbish. What who would do that? It's just story making. So I, I'm not averse to techniques and strategies. I think they're useful. But once you start playing the game, they're just they they're they're not they're not the thing. The thing is the story making. And I think that's the thing I hope for the people that I work with is helping them to think about story making rather than thinking about techniques. That's how I hope that they'll do it. And I think going back to your question is that important? I think it is if you want to raise your game. If you want to play games and do warm-ups and strategy stories, if you want to do art, then you need to think about it in a different way. You need to frame it differently. Anyway.
Uh, yeah, what I understood is like, yeah, this is important that in the beginning, when you are exploring strategies and activities are okay, but then you gradually, as a beginner, you gradually develop the sense of connecting uh, through story making, and then you develop that sense later, and then those activities um, do not stand as activities only. You make part of that story then, or story, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
explore what you want to explore.
Yeah.
Before I ask you my
Sorry,
next question,
I just need to clarify that one thing because I think it's a journey. I'm
yeah,
not, I think it's just that if you know there's somewhere else to go
yeah,
and it's not just about doing strategies and, doing a list
yes,
of
yes,
things, if you know that that's just part of a tool set or a, some stuff that you need to learn in order to get up there, then you know
yeah,
that that's just part of the journey, really.
yeah. So I think, yeah, I was not able to clear my question. Now I can say that sometimes we fail to find those connections and we look at those activities only. It was done, but we failed as a beginner, we failed to find the connections and the direction and the underneath thought going. We fail to catch that. So I understand when you say that they can get it gradually when they keep practicing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
before
it's like
I,
anything. Sorry, it's like anything. The more you
yeah,
practice something, the better you
yeah,
get. It's like,
yeah,
and then those things that you practice don't really, they're just part of your practice now. They're not things that
yeah,
you think about. They're
yeah,
just part of your practice. I think the simplest way of, and that simplest analogy I can think of is riding a bike. When you ride a bike,
yeah,
until you get it, you're wobbly and you're thinking about it. And then one day you ride and then you never think about it again. You just ride. That's a
yeah.
simple thing.
Mm. So I was saying before I ask my next question, I have got the screen to see what was going on there. I don't know if many people are there right now. Iona was there, if I am pronouncing the name right. Iona was there, and she said she will not be able to stay for long. And Mr. Bhavi Patel and Helen Halisi was also there. And she had also to leave. These are the names you know, that is why I'm saying. Otherwise, there are other people, Meenakshi from India, and she has a question.
Oh, yeah.
The core subjects when would you like to take this question from Meenakshi? These are two questions. So, okay, I will ask one by one. How can drama be effectively integrated into core subjects when classroom time is limited, especially senior grades? Do you have any comment on that? I think you must be getting this question a lot of times. Where is the
Yeah,
time?
yeah, sure. Well, um, it, I think, I think the thing is that um, so much of learning is about engagement. And I think it's such a crucial thing, and we don't talk about it nearly enough. The more you're engaged in something, the more it matters to you, the more interested you are in it, the more difference it makes to what you're doing,
Hmm.
the better the learning will be, the more effective it will be, in my opinion. Now, I've had this argument with other people and they say it doesn't matter. I don't agree with them. I think that's mad anyway, but I think it really matters. So if you think about time, if you set something up in which, like that, you looked at those children in that photograph with the dragon nest,
Yeah, yeah.
that's core. They're learning core stuff there. They're learning science, they're learning writing, they're drawing. There's going to be mathematics. There's going to be all kinds of things that are core subjects that they're going to be doing. Loads of reading, all kinds of things, writing in different forms. Now, it didn't take Nicole long to set that context up. Half a morning, couple of hours. Now, the benefit from that is enormous. The benefit is when the children come in, she doesn't have to teach them, you don't have to set them down and then start talking to them about what they're learning today. She just says, well, look, we've got to get back to work. Can you get back to your desks? And, or she'll sit them down and go, well, look, this just happened. And it's part of their learning. It's part of the way that they're making meaning. So it just continues and it's much more efficient in that term. I remember I had a lad in my class years and years ago, this was, and his name was Joseph, and he was really, really difficult to engage, a really troubled lad, loads of chaos in his life. He'd go to bed at 1 in the morning after watching telly all night, and so really difficult to reach. And for a while, he was quite hard, and he wouldn't sit on the carpet, wouldn't join in, really disruptive. And I said to him, Joseph, you like drawing. Here's a stack of paper and some pens. He liked drawing in black. That was the only color he'd use. I said, you sit there and you draw, and as long as you're in the classroom, that's good enough. For me, that's good enough. Just be in the
Okay.
classroom. And he'd draw, he's drawing, drawing, drawing. Now, a lot of his drawings were what he was seeing on the telly at night, inappropriate stuff, mostly violence. He'd draw these things because he had a lot of stuff in his head, and drawing was a way of making sense of it. Yeah, draw, draw, draw. Anyway, over on the carpet is the rest of the class, and we've just started a content. We've started a story up about Romans, and there's these gladiatorial games going on, and these Roman people are putting on these games for the emperor, and we're learning all about Rome. The kids are loving it. They're all learning about Rome. Anyway, a few days of this, and Joseph's fine because he's doing his drawing. Anyway, 2 or 3 days in, I went over and looked at what Joseph was drawing, and he was drawing gladiators.
Mm.
And I said to him, "Are they gladiators, Joseph?" And he went, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I went, "I think those could be really useful for our story. Do you mind if we use them in the story?" He went, "Yeah, if you want." So I said to the others, I said, "Look, Joseph's drawing gladiators, and I think these would be really useful in the story. How do you think we could use them? And the children have got loads of ideas. They're going, well, they could be around they could be posters around the city telling people about the games. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right. Joseph, can you do us a load of those? He went, yeah, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll do those, mate. The next lesson, I absolutely true this. The next lesson, he joined us on the carpet, and the rest of the year, he was as good as gold. And I've got film of him at the end of the year where he's completely engrossed in what we're doing. Now, answering the time question is you could look at that and say, he spent 3 days drawing and learning nothing. He sat there drawing for 3 days. That's a waste of his time. I'd say no. I'd say no, it wasn't a waste of his time. Because look at him now.
Yeah.
Look at him now. Before that, he was unteachable. He wouldn't sit on the classroom on the carpet. He was constantly disruptive. He was causing trouble all the time. Now look at him. Now he's absolutely having a brilliant time. He's learning loads and he's fully integrated into the classroom and he's there all the time. Those 3 days were the best 3 days that I ever invested in a child, giving him the opportunity to find his place, and then me as the teacher using what he'd done to put him at the center of what we were doing. Now, I don't know anything else that does that, Shuba. I don't know anything else in teaching that brings kids in like Joseph and helps them. You remember that thing I said about generosity? He was
Yeah.
generous with his pictures, and that allowed him to feel like he belonged and he had a place in what we were doing, and it celebrated what he was good at. He wasn't much good at anything else. He couldn't write because he'd never sat down and learned how to write. He never had any reason to do it. Didn't see the point. But now he was now part of what we were doing, and then he started to learn how to write and do all the other things. So I think the time thing, it really, for me, you have to look at it as a long term. You know,
Yeah.
we've got ourselves. I don't know what it's like in India, but in England, we've got ourselves into this place where everything is micro. Everything is about what have the children learned in the last hour. You know, how does that build one, incrementally? How can we look at Joseph in week one and look at him in week three? What progress has he made? How can we scale? Oh, that's not how people learn. That's not how children engage with the curriculum. That doesn't mean anything to them. They don't care about any of that. You've got to find out, you've got to put yourself in their head. Say, what's it like to be Joseph? How can we bring Joseph in? And you have to think about time completely differently. You invest in that, give him a place to belong and an opportunity to be generous. And Mantle the expert, teaching and story making, does that better than anything else I know. There you go. That's my answer to that.
I don't know when our education policy makers will understand this. Because yes, you are right. That is what uh, this question reminds me like if this is uh, we call it period,
Yeah.
one part of time when one subject is given. I mean, what did you learn in 30 minutes? You have to tell us. What did you learn in next 30 minutes? You have to tell us. What did you do today? I mean, they they don't have that patience or reason to let the process happen and create the space of deep learning. It's like, okay, what do you know? Write down. What do you know? Speak out and all that, but not getting into what they need to learn, getting inside it, being part of it, like you have been sharing in Mantle of the Expert slides, other things. So and if we, I think if we calculate the whole time, the way they are learning fast, learn these questions and answer question and answers. And the way when they learn totally engrossed, engaged, there is no comparison, I think, of this learning and that learning.
Oh,
So that is unfortunate that when we are taking time, when they are engaged, and we say what is happening.
yeah,
We want to see quick results. 2
yeah,
plus 2, 4. They have learned it today.
right,
Yes. Okay. Move ahead.
right.
Hmm. Yeah. So
So
nicely
there's
explained.
a school I'm working in next week. I told you about in Halifax. I've been working there for about 6 years. I don't do the teaching. The teachers do the teaching. I just go in and support them in training and development. Sorry,
Okay.
excuse me. I need a
Oh,
sip of
all
water.
right.
But they get the best writing results for their seniors, they what we call year six, of any school in their area. It wasn't always like that. When I first started working there a few years ago, they didn't. Their writing scores were not very good, dreadful actually. But now they get the best, and the other schools are really interested in what they're doing because you can get good in what we call SATs, which are the end of primary tests. You can get good results in writing um, by doing it didactically, teaching them the you know technical stuff of writing. You can do that, but to get the really high level stuff involves children writing imaginatively, and that's what they excel at. That's what the school, Bradshaw, their name are. Those children excel at the imaginative stuff. They're good at
Hmm.
they're good at the technical stuff. They're really good. They're not substandard in that regard, but they get the high scores because they are brilliant at the imaginative stuff. And the kids love writing. So they're not leaving school, you know, thinking to themselves, well, I never want to do that again, which is, unfortunately happens quite a lot in school. Um, they love it and they're really good at it. And it's because the school over time has invested in
Yeah.
their long-term development. And they're not, the analogy is weighing the pig, the weighing the pig thing where you constantly weighing the pig to see if it's growing. It's like, that's not how it works. You allow these things to develop rather than constantly checking to see if they're measuring them, and because that's not how people learn.
Yeah.
People learn because they're invested in it, because they can see meaning in it, because it has purpose and outcome and makes a difference.
Yeah. We are talking about mental of the expert. We cannot stop talking about Dorothy Heathcote.
Yeah.
And I have many questions, but I will reduce them to one or two questions only.
Okay.
What does Dorothy Heathcote mean to you, Tim?
She's an inspiration, an absolutely astonishing life, and a way of looking at the world, which for me, when I came across it, was entirely new. I'd never looked at things the way that she does. Um, and it transformed me as a teacher completely, turned me into an entirely different kind of teacher, even though I'd only been teaching for a small while. Actually, what happened was that after I'd seen Luke, it still took me a few years to learn how to start teaching like Luke and Dorothy. Um, and I was lucky to meet her a few times, and she was
Yeah.
a fantastic um, raconteur. She could tell brilliant stories. And, looking back now, that was the way that she interacted with the world. It was stories were her medium, and
Mm.
drama was the way that she realized those stories. There's a book called Drama as a Medium for Learning by Betty Wagner. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
aware of it, but it's about Dorothy's work. Um, and I love that book. It's really interesting because you kind of go back to pre-Mantle of the Expert and see what she was doing in those early kind of or earlier experiments and days. But she was of course, she was always using drama, but drama for her was a medium. It wasn't. It was about the way that she told stories. It was always for her the way of exploring things rather than the outcome. It wasn't about the drama. Wasn't the outcome. It was the medium. Um, and that, yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, as I say, that really transformed um, both my life and my teaching. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, thank you. A few words, but yes, that tell a lot about Dorothy. And I don't know if her work is totally holistically explored or is still some areas remain underappreciated or yet to be explored. I don't know. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think I don't. I think it's not a it's not a it's the right word. I'm getting tired now. I'm gonna have to stop soon. But it's not a like a set area. It's not like you can say this is her field of work.
Yeah.
It's more a rich and an open landscape. And I think I think what's so interesting to me about her work is that through studying it and applying it and thinking about it, um, I've kind of created my understanding of what she was doing. If I look at I look at film like David Allen, who's absolute brilliant, Mavin, and collected all these videos and resources and things. Um, I look at the videos on his website of Dorothy teaching, and it's not really how I teach. It's in the same realm, but my teaching is my teaching. I've got my own way of teaching. I compare it with Luke's or Brian's or Viv's or other people's work whose work, and Iona and other people whose work I know pretty well. We all of us have our own versions of um, her approach. So I don't think there's any edge to it. I don't think you can sort of sail up to it and then sort of go, oh, that's it. That's as far as it goes. I think people can just push it in whatever direction they like because she's left us something that is a compass rather than a defined map. Yeah, I think that's it.
If Dorothy was here in this time of AI, how would
Um,
have she taken it?
it's so funny you asked that because I asked myself that question this morning. Yeah, that's so funny that you've asked that. Um,
Oh,
so Dorothy, she, yeah. So I visited her home a couple of times. People know her much better than me, knew her much better, but I was lucky enough to visit her twice.
mm.
And she lived in a quite big house, and her front room, I don't know why, but she went in and showed us something, and it was absolutely full of costumes and props and things that people had made for her dramas. And she had boxes of stuff. We went to the archive, Luke and I, with her, and looked through the archive, and loads. She used to make all these amazing things, and I think, I mean, lots of those things she made, and lots of things were made for her on her, by her friends or other people, um, and they were all about embellishing the story, making the story more accessible and more wonderful. And so I think she would have carried on doing all of that. I don't, and that's not something I do. I don't have costumes and elaborate props and things. I don't have the time for any of that. Um, um, so I think she would have, I think, okay, so here's the answer. I'll come to it. I've realized what the answer is. Okay. All right. So, number one, Dorothy was terrible with technology, absolutely awful. She couldn't use PowerPoint. She didn't use email. She wrote everything down. I mean, she just
Yeah.
didn't have any idea about technology at all. So it would have to be Dorothy who was like, who could use technology. It couldn't be the real Dorothy because she didn't know or had no interest in technology. So
Hmm.
if she was interested in technology, if she knew how to use it, then I think she would have found it fascinating. But there's a lot of ifs and buts in there. I'm not sure
Yeah.
that I'm not sure that that would be true of her. I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm. Because there are questions sometimes like uh, people start because we are living in the age of AI, so people started looking at AI and discussing with it and finding some answers. Like you said, if you now you need not to go to the library and see 10, 20 books and then find what was there. You can quickly find what this and move ahead, save your time and move ahead. Um, so, but it's still your work. You are so curious about technology and working in AI. Is there anything you will never hand over to AI?
Um, hmm, I don't know. That was an unexpected question. Um, well, in
It's all
my work,
right.
you mean in my
I
work?
mean, do you think yes? If we do this, then AI can really harm us. Right now, you are in a position where you say it is helping us. It is our assistant. But there must be some uh, point that if we start doing this, we may lose that which liberates us now, feels us that it is liberating. Do
Okay.
you
Yeah.
see such
All right.
danger, or we are yet to explore that also?
Okay. Well, we're now getting into the realms of science fiction, and I think I think we're at an extraordinary time in history. I don't. This is just extraordinary, and I think there are two paths. One
Hmm.
is that we find a way of harnessing AI, using AI to benefit everybody, and everybody benefits from it. That's one way. I think there's a much darker, more disturbing, dangerous path where AI is not harnessed for the benefit of everybody, and it's used to crush people and inhibit them. Um, I going back to what we talked about in terms of educational outcomes and what education's about, and the way that the governments tend to look at the economy and through the development of engineering and science and capital. Um, you can imagine very well a very nasty future where AI could be used to um, overwhelm people, take their jobs and create, take money from them, and people could live in poverty, and children could be subjected to that kind of system. So rather than my lovely schools where there's community and people are coming together, and you could imagine the government could say, well, children could learn just as well in an office building with a cubicle and some kind of headphones, and they could sit there, and AI would, and somebody would do is come round and give them a drink and something to eat, and they'd maybe get a walk around the playground or around the car park at 3 times a day or something. I can imagine that. I can. I mean, that is possible. Um, I hope that doesn't happen, but I'm afraid we are at the crossroads, and I don't know which way we're going to go, I'm afraid. So that's a bit of a, you asked the question, but that's a bit of a grim answer to that one, I'm afraid. I hope it's good. I hope it benefits everyone, but I have
Yeah,
fears that it
I
won't.
understand. The intention is all good and that is going to help a lot of people tremendously. That is there. But yeah, I was just thinking of any danger you have in your mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Moving ahead with mm, yeah.
Well,
The
Shuba, I'm gonna
uh,
look. I'm just before you do move ahead. I am gonna need to leave in about 10 minutes or so, if that's okay. So we've been talking for
so we
uh,
have 10 minutes, you say?
yeah. So we've been talking for 3 hours. So I've got yeah. I need to leave in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, yes, 3 hours. Oh yeah, 3 hours. Your your water is finished, I think.
Yeah, my water's done, and the dogs need walking, and
All right, so we'll finish this in next 10 minutes.
okay.
Um, First of all, one thing about your writing. So, do you write to discover what you think, or do you write once you know uh, what you think?
Yeah. Um, no, I think writing is thinking. Um, I don't I tend not to write if I don't have an idea. Obviously, I start with an idea, and then writing is a way of organizing thoughts and developing ideas. Um, so I spend a lot. I do. I mean, you've read some of the things I've written. I do write blogs and articles, and I've written books, but I spend most of my time writing at the moment anyway, writing, planning, long narratives, um, and I have an idea, where this might go, but as I'm going along it, I'm find new things that come along and new
Mm.
ideas, and so yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? Writing. It's not like you don't just sit there and
Yeah.
just write whatever's in your head. That doesn't really how it works.
And let's talk about reading. Is there any book you want to go back to again and again?
Yeah. Well, I said that I'd share a couple of books with you. Um, let me let me do that because I think both of these books are worth looking at for different reasons. So, one of them is the Dorothy Heathcote story, which was written by Gavin Bolton, and I think it's the best book about Dorothy and her work, and really clear, really well written. It's got a great chapter on Mantle the Expert, but it really tells her story, and she was remarkable. Really, I mean, it says remarkable drama teacher. She really was remarkable and lived a remarkable life. Um, and I mean, I didn't know her well, but I knew her well enough to recognize her in this book when I read it. Had lots of conversations with her, lots of stories, about her and the things that she did. So I'd highly recommend that. And I've got a couple of copies. One copy is just full of scribbles and notes and highlights and markings and things. So I bought a second copy because it had sort of got to the point where it wasn't readable anymore. The other book isn't anything to do with drama. It's called The Unfolding of Language. Um,
Okay.
and it's a fascinating book about how language evolved over time and how it unfolds. And I'll stop sharing for a minute while I explain it. So the question it asks is why don't languages die out? Why don't languages just or why don't they just end up just being a series of noises? So what he says is that as languages, as words are used, they tend to soften. So I live in a place called Norwich, but if you looked at the word Norwich, Norwich, it was originally pronounced Norwich, but it's turned into Norwich. And the reason it's turned into Norwich is because human beings soften sounds over time. So old words like Norwich become softened and rounded like a stone worn away by the water. So what if that happen if that's happening all the time to words, which it is, why don't words just end up kind of just dissolving into nothing like sand? And the reason they don't is because there's another mechanism going on, which is a generative mechanism, which is to do with metaphor. So most words are metaphors or started out as metaphors. So people create metaphors, and metaphors are like tiny little stories, and then
Mhm.
they generate new words and new combinations of words, and then they unfold into more language. And this process is constantly going on all the time. So if you go back, I don't know about other languages, but if you go back and look at English, if you go back to Old English and English before when it was Anglo-Saxon, there's lots of words there that sound different to words that we have now. And then there are billions of other words that didn't exist at those times. And I just find that whole idea and the way that languages are combined. Like you can look at I'm sure you've seen these trees of languages that connect languages through time and different places. So Sanskrit, I think, began in Persia or India, and then that language traveled into Europe, and then there's a lot of languages that come from those roots. Uh, so yeah, it's a history book and a book about language and evolution, and it's fascinating. It's a great book, and it's really well written as well. So those are my two things.
Both the books are quite interesting for you, Dorothy, for obvious reasons, and the language because I have been working for a language, so that's very interesting to see these
Yeah.
language connections and all. Um, yeah, this question may sound a little awkward or say coming abruptly because we are short of time now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in your experience in England or in Europe, especially, can someone build a financially sustainable life through drama education?
Very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult.
Mm,
Um, I mean, yes, um, you can, um, but at the moment, I mean, there are dozens of people in the UK that make a living out of drama and education and do various things. Um, but it's difficult. It's really hard. Money's short. Money in education is very short. Um, so I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, I'd say that was hard. Hard way to make a living. Not easy.
Hmm. Hmm. So the scene is not very different from India
No.
and
Or America or New Zealand
or America.
or
Yeah.
other places that I know. Same story. Yeah.
Um, are there any ideas you believe more strongly today than you used to 20 years back in your work?
Um,
Or it can be opposite, like you used uh, not to believe so much. I mean, you believed less strongly, but today you believe more strongly.
yeah.
Are there some shifts?
Um, I don't know. I'm 62, so I think most of your ideas are formed um by the time you're in your 40s. It's difficult because I or at least your values and your ethics. I look at film of me 20 years ago, um, and I don't hate it. I don't wince. I don't kind of go, oh, that was terrible. I think it was fine, and uh, I don't. I mean, this sounds terrible, I think, but I don't know if there is. I think I kind of formed my. I mean, that's not to say I haven't learned anything. I've learned loads.
Hmm.
I mean, I never stop learning. But I think in terms of the values and beliefs, I don't think I've changed much in the last 20 years. I think I'd had those values and beliefs, and I think I've stuck with them. Yeah, I can't think of anything.
Okay, so I started the conversation with the question, what kind of conversation you like, you enjoy most? And towards the end, I want to ask you what kind of questions you like to be asked.
Ha! Um,
I mean, you enjoy responding to a particular kind of questions. When people talk, people ask these questions, you feel good to respond to. Is
um, yeah, I don't know. I suppose it depends who I'm
nothing like
talking
that.
to.
Nothing like
Yeah,
that.
I don't, I mean, when I was younger, much younger, I did philosophy at university, philosophy and history,
Hmm.
and I would enjoy spending hours talking philosophy. Um, but I tend not to now. I find, you know, like your question about um, stories, and you notice the way that I kind of hedged it by saying, yeah, that's not really something I know very much about. I, I, I kind of, as I've grown older, I kind of tend to do that more. As when I was younger, I'd just kind of launch into things. I'd sort of start talking about things, I don't know, stuff that I didn't know very much about, probably. Um, because I thought, well, we can talk about anything, can't we, really? But as I've grown older, I've kind of become a bit more cautious of that. I think I understand there are an awful lot of things that I know very little about, and I'm cautious about having an opinion on them, or at least expressing it, because it can be so wrong about stuff, so wrong about things. And there are people who spend their lives um, studying things. You know, I think social media's got a big part to play for that, because social media really lives on people just spouting, saying whatever they think about anything. You know, there was a train crash yesterday in Norwich, in England. Not a terrible one, but somebody died and 90 people were injured. And social media is just full of people giving their opinion, just saying things. And you go, well, you don't know anything about this. You shouldn't talk about things you don't know anything about. And I think there's an awful lot of things that I don't know very much about, and even things I do know something about, I don't know enough about to be confident in my opinions. Anyway, that was a long way round answering that question. So I dodged it. Did you notice? I didn't answer it.
No, you answered your own way. And with mm, we are coming to the end of this conversation. Thank you very much who tried to be there for this long time or who were there for a short time even. Thank you very much. And I will thank to those who will be watching the recording of this conversation because they could not join us today. And uh, you are welcome to this platform and you are welcome to suggest any other guest you want to listen to or you want see a guest here who has worked in arts and life. Tim, you will be the last person to say something about something that has remained unsaid or something that was going on in your mind, but uh, mm, you could not say during our conversation. Is there anything like that? So I would like to listen to that. So we do not
Yeah,
feel like, oh, I wanted to say this, but I could not.
yeah, yeah. I wanted just to go back a little bit to because I'm not. I mean, one of the jokes that my children laugh about with me is that I've always got I've always got an optimistic view on things. I'm always very
Hmm.
optimistic about things, and they laugh at it. They say, "Oh, you're always optimistic, Dad." But I am an optimistic person, and I do hope for the best. And I kind of, I want to hope and be very optimistic about the future. And one of my, you said when you looked at the slides, you're very kind about them, and I hope that the AI, the work that I'm doing with AI, is going to make teaching a story making mentally expert much more accessible to people. And through those people, through the teachers that will use it, to the children. Because if it does reach those children, even if it's like I don't know, it's not perfect because nothing's ever perfect. But if it reaches those children, and I hope that it can, then it will make their experience of school so much more enjoyable and useful. Um, and that's my belief. That's my belief. That's why I've kind of done what I've done really is because that was the experience that I had as a new teacher was that it did transform my teaching and by extension the experience of the children I worked with. Joseph, for one child, I would not have done that with Joseph. I wouldn't have done that. I would have if I hadn't learned how to think, look at the experience of children through their eyes. If I'd have hadn't learnt that, hadn't thought about my classroom in that way as a community of learners, then that experience could have been awful for Joseph. It could have been terrible. And I'm afraid that that happens so much in schools because we are always trying to fit children to the shape of the school. This is something Ken Robinson talked about, of course, talked about this a lot, that trying to make schools, children conform to schooling. His sorry, I'm going on about Ken Robinson now, but his idea for Ken was that in the end he gave up on schools really towards the end of his life, and he started thinking that schools need to be transformed into other kinds of places. I don't think that's true. I think classrooms can be laboratories, and it doesn't matter what happens around them. what can happen in a classroom can be amazing, because in our imagination we can go anywhere, be anyone, anytime, doing anything. So you don't need to transform the school into some kind of arts center and all the things that he talked about. You don't need to do that. You just need to use the right approach in the classroom. So I hope that's what technology is going to do. I hope technology is going to allow our school systems across the world to create new kinds of schools that work in a different way with children, in an imaginative way. That's what I hope. So that's the last thing I wanted to say, really. Just I'm
Yeah,
not
thank you
I'm
very
not
much. Yes.
pessimistic. I'm not pessimistic. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. That's lovely to end with. Also this end with this optimistic note. Our classrooms, a lot can happen there if we find imaginative ways of teaching and learning in the classrooms. Let's hope that, and you are already contributing towards that. That is a wonderful thing. And I'm so thankful to you for making this time for this podcast. Thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much, Tim.
No, good.
And thank you all those who are here and who will be here to hear the thoughts and insights from Tim. So, bye bye. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much,
Thank you.
Tim.
Thank you
Bye
very much.
and bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Goodbye.
Thanks a
Goodbye.
lot.
Bye.
Here we